Okay, good evening, committee, other members, and also officers here. I see no members of the press are here. They're here, they're not here yet. A very warm welcome. Before we start the strategy group for real tonight, we have a very delighted to welcome Daniel Mulawad, who's the Chief Secretary of Semlet, and he's come to inform you what Semlet do, and we're part of Semlet. Daventry District Council is part of Semlet. I know Daniel's a very capable Chief Executive. We're very lucky to have him there at Semlet, and he'll tell you some good news, I hope, in this presentation about how Semlet are helping Daventry in our agenda. Well, obviously, it's to give you the broader picture about the LEPs, because obviously we're also NEP, the Northamptonshire Enterprise Partnership. And I think Daventry's view always was we'd best be in both rather than one, might not be in both, and as it turns out, that's paid off for us so far. So over to you, Daniel, and I said to Daniel beforehand, as he goes through his presentation, if you want to ask questions, please ask as we go through. And he's happy with that. Over to you, sir.
Well, first and foremost, allow me to thank you for the very kind invitation to be with you tonight, and I'm delighted to be reflecting on some of the work that Semlet, South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership, is doing, and indeed we have to bear in mind that Daventry is an integral part of that wider geography, geography that we define in economic terms as a functional economic area. This is where we do business. Businesses do business where it makes sense to do business, and of course we live our lives around that. And we educate our children, and we live wholesome lives in geographies that make sense to us. And economically, that geography makes sense on a much wider scale called the South East Midlands. And so tonight is just a reflection on some of the work that we've been doing, and just to give you an insight into how we see the patch, as it were. We're not allowed to refer to regions anymore. Regions are passé now when we talk about the patch. So, I hope that I'm not going to be replicating some detail that you already know. If you already know it all, I'll be very pleased just to move on. So, by all means, just do register if you know all of this already. But I'll gallop through a little bit. So, as you probably know, Local Enterprise Partnership, fundamentally, it's an economic development agency. It's not a reincarnation of regional development agencies, if only we had the budgets that they have. But we are an economic development agency at heart, and we comprise of 11 local authorities, and as you probably know only too well, in the Northamptonshire context, we have 5 of the 7 districts in our partnership. And we are led by the private sector, or at least our chair, who holds the balance, is notionally private sector. But of course, as true partnerships, as you would expect, we never take things to the wire, and it's never a case of the last vote that actually sways a decision. We are an inclusive, and open, and engaging partnership, and obviously we want to ensure that we muster credibility and accountability across our entire partnership and our partners in any decisions that we take. So this is not a forced agenda, this is our collective agenda. And the secretariat that I represent at the centre of the partnership is purely here to serve the interests of our partners. We have no agenda ourselves. I have no agenda myself for the partnership. I serve the interests of the partnership and its constituent members. And so what do we do? Of course, we work with businesses and indeed with local authorities. And our principal aim is to stimulate the types of investment in terms of learning, in terms of knowledge transfer, in working with our educational system, in terms of working with our businesses, helping them aspire to grow, indeed flicking the coin, bringing in investment, ensuring that the right type of investments are taking place here. And of course, you will know only too well that this geography, the geography of the South East Midlands, is indeed a geography that depicts growth. And certainly if you look at the history of this area, the trend of the last decade, indeed 2 decades, is for growth. And indeed, government predicts that the growth is going to be in this area going forward as well. And so mindful of that growth and the fact that we have that ability to grow, our principal objective here is to make sure that that growth, which we know we can have, is balanced, is sustainable, in the context that we don't want just a population boom and just creating housing. We want to ensure that we can have the right skills in the right people locally to take up the opportunities for jobs that we hopefully will be creating and stimulating, and ensuring that people don't have to go out of the area to secure the types of employment that they require, that they demand, that they expect in any locality to be able to service their families' needs and indeed commit to their community as well. So one thing that's quite useful here is that the geography. If you're not long-sighted like I am, you'll probably notice that this darker grey area is London, and this is our geography, and this is to scale. And so quite often people forget, and indeed perhaps they've got good excuses to forget, that there's a lot that exists outside London, nonetheless, and indeed, secondly, that we are an economic powerhouse in our own right. I was recently at an event where Liverpool, as a key core city in the UK, was presenting. And what the civil servants in the room didn't realise was, when Liverpool had finished their presentation, and they reflected on the significance of their economic powerhouse and why Liverpool needed the types of investment that it needed to be able to deliver its growth agenda, I then reflected on our functional economic area. So, if I said to you, before perhaps I shared these figures with you, that Liverpool has 45,000 businesses, and it has a GVA, an economy, an engine that generates 20 billion in gross value added profit. Okay. Then we come to our area, and we have, actually it's just short of 76,000 businesses, and we have a GVA, an economic engine generating virtually 39, let's say it's 38 billion. So double the size of Liverpool.
Don't we also have a lot of smaller businesses which aren't big enough to register for VAT?
Well, indeed, and that is a very valuable point. In all, we have 141,000 registered businesses, but not VAT-registered businesses. And of course, that means that there are a lot of people, for one reason or another, who have had to become self-employed, but they don't cross the VAT threshold. And of course, that in itself is a good perception, a valuable point. But of the businesses that we have, the vast majority of them are SMEs. And probably more of the S's than the N's as well. And what we typically do is we've done our economic homework, as it were. We invest very heavily in economic models, and that's something that we do on your behalf, and we share all that data with you. And we do a lot of business models, and we share that data with you. And we are here to bring added value to all our constituent partners. Yes, sir?
Sir, I noticed that you put high performance technology at the top, quite rightly so. Logistics underneath that, thank goodness. The Midlands is known for the logistics centre for obvious reasons of the UK.
Yes, indeed.
And does your work reflect that whilst, yes, we are a good logistical place to be, also with an emphasis on high performance, so to try and get the emphasis away from the logistics and bring in the high performance?
Okay, the reason why these aren't in preference, these are actually the four top showcase sectors. The sectors that you could define as over and above all the others, these are the ones that are most going to contribute to our economic growth. So that's why these have been identified. But you make a very valid point in terms of logistics. There's a reason why Midlands is in our name, because we are actually in the middle of a very large reach to a market. And we have a very significant logistics sector. Indeed, next week's event, or one of our major events next week, is purely on the logistics sector. We've done a great deal of work on it, but indeed, even in the context of one of our publications, which we recently launched called planes, trains and automobiles, if you don't mind me going to the centrefold,
It's not rude, is it?
I hope not. It's got Daventry in it, and you can see that this is what this locality contributes, not only in terms of movement, but actually to the logistics sector as well. So this is a copy here which I will leave with your officers to share as well. And electronic copies of anything that you see or desire will be serviced to you in due course. So those are the accelerated sectors for us. And then, of course, some people have this perception that we don't do business strategically with our partners, with our neighbours and so forth. And just to put it into context, I thought I would just extract some of the examples where we're working with NEP. So this authority is in both camps. We work harmoniously to support each other's local growth funds. Indeed, we have NEP as an integral part of our enterprise zone, which is chaired by our chair. We work, indeed, even with the county council around some key initiatives, including Northampton Alive. We share a 4 million pot that we manage together on HPT R&D. We work collaboratively in terms of inward investment opportunities. We held a very major event at Silverstone for 330 businesses. Very recently at the CEMEX Low Carbon Conference and Exhibition, we invited NEP to come along and to nurture some potential business investors who were in town. So, and then of course we're also constantly looking for the opportunities to secure additional funding and investments for the locality, and of course we will work collaboratively, not only with NEP, but indeed with any partners if it suits the locality and will benefit us in the short to medium term. So that is strategically what we're doing. And actually, I think we were the first LEP in the country to invest some of our funding in a geography that wasn't on our patch. We decided that we would invest £500,000 in the A14 around Cambridge. Not on our patch, but it was as a stimulus to get a £1.5 billion commitment from the Department for Transport to help upgrade that road, because critically we know that many of the businesses that we're talking about, trying to get to the ports, trying to get to the markets, need that type of investment in the infrastructure. And sometimes we have to think a little bit more mature about investing where it actually makes sense for us more strategically than just thinking very peripherally about just having it on our doorstep. And then of course the activities are very much focused on funding streams, and I'll give you a little bit more of a flavour in terms of what we're doing there. We work very collaboratively with a major group which we have under CEMLAP's auspices of property developers, investors and infrastructure group that are really the private sector engaged with CEMLAP at the heart of our partnership as well, so that this is not purely a public forum, this is a public-private partnership. And of course we have the business support service, which I'll detail a little bit more. We work with large businesses, and albeit that the vast majority of what we do is with SMEs, we also have to recognise that there are some large businesses and we need to be mindful of supporting them, particularly where they're foreign owned, they employ a lot of people, and we've got to ensure that their health and well-being in any locality is also supported over the long term. And of course we do quite a lot of events. I'll give you a taster for that in a second as well. So this was the very first fund that the government gave local enterprise partnerships. It was called Growing Places Fund. And indeed it was awarded to us before I even took up my post a year and a half ago. And what the partnership then did was it made a call to all our partners and said, do you have projects that will unlock potential growth in your locality, bearing in mind that this fund, the first fund that we were ever given, was a fund that was meant to be recyclable. It was an evergreen fund. We lend it out, we make things happen, but then the money has to be repaid to us. And so you can see just a number of projects here that we've already committed to lending the money out. It's already gone out, and of course the critical bit of this is that it's all going to come back in. And then we'll have another opportunity to then reinvest it in different opportunities and different projects elsewhere. But you can see that although the geography that I and the South East Midlands represent goes all the way down to Luton and virtually to Oxford and so forth, you can see that as a partnership, we can take mature decisions about where the funding should go. And you can see that actually in this particular case, quite a lot of it has been in and around this locality, or certainly in Northamptonshire context as well.
All of it.
Well, all of it here, because we've got a few more examples elsewhere.
Could I ask you, so in terms of really getting this money paid back, which is interesting, is paying this money out as well as for, obviously, investment in infrastructure.
Yes.
How does that, in actual fact, does repayment come back in terms of, is that through the councils, through the private sector?
It's by whoever borrowed the money. So, for instance, if we invest in infrastructure to unlock...
Well, take the 3.85 million for the Northern Orbital Link Road. Right?
Yes.
When you go on that road, is there a booth where you put your half a crowns in and off you go, and you collect and they send it back to you?
No, what happens is it unlocks a major housing development. And the return is from the housing development.
That's it. I just wanted to make sure there was an understanding about that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, and so we also were given, I mean, I don't know if you know there are 39 local enterprise partnerships. And of the 39 local enterprise partnerships, 24 of us have an enterprise zone. And when we were bestowed an enterprise zone, we had to decide where it had to go. And the partnership, again on a very mature basis, decided that the best case at the time was to put it and designate it in Northampton around this water side. And so, as a consequence, that's where we've put quite a lot of investment. And in some respects, you might think, well, it's not on this patch. But I'm here to also convince you that the benefit of us designating that patch as an enterprise zone also has benefits for the wider partnership. Because clearly it stimulates growth in that particular part of the world. But more importantly than the investments that we're making, and we're making quite a lot of investments, and we're thinking very creatively. We've already, as an example, borrowed from the Public Works Loan Board 46 million to help the University of Northampton bring its two campuses and centrally located onto our enterprise zone to help facilitate that move. So we've done a lot of creative things to help stimulate growth. But the significance is, the more we stimulate growth, the better the return is to the partnership, because we raise business rate uplift, the business rate uplift from the developments come back to us. And at the moment, the neutral forecast over the lifespan that we have the enterprise zone is that we will have 30 million coming back to the partnership. And the significance of that, in our context, is that it will be a board decision about how they will reinvest that money in the wider partnership. Because that's a critical thing. The whole purpose of the enterprise zone is to help stimulate growth in one particular area, but to also benefit the wider partnership. And so clearly you can start seeing that much of what we're doing is not just about short-term opportunistic investments. We'll be opportunistic, no doubt about that. But we're also thinking more long-term, because clearly we are intrinsically here to stay, and we have the long-term well-being of our geography, the communities and the businesses that we serve to aspire to work on your behalf to support. So, the Local Growth Fund is a fund that finally the government decided to make available, and it is a 2 billion per year fund that is exclusively ring-fenced for local enterprise partnerships. So you can already appreciate that the general thrust of what government is doing, and indeed, even if we do have a change in central administration terms, all the parties have subscribed to the future of local enterprise partnerships as a conduit to help facilitate both public and private partnership working and investment. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality. And so clearly we are working very affirmatively to try to secure that money. And so we have, as an example, supported and were successful in securing 6.5 million for the Daventry campus for the college. We've helped secure 6 million towards the Daventry development link. So these are just examples of what we're doing at the moment. And of course, we work very closely with your leadership, with your consignment of officers, integral to the machinery that drives our partnership, because we don't do anything for the sake of it out of the context of the partnership agreement about what is our priority and where we focus our efforts. Because we have, just like any local authority, very limited resources, and we've got to be very canny about how we deploy those resources for maximum return to our locality. And so the next tranche of money, if the local government context for this was secure as much money from the national funds, which is the local growth fund, then we also have European money to play for. And that, as you might know, comes in cycles. It's a 7-year cycle up to 2021. And in our particular case, with match funding, which can be from national as well as local sources, we will be spending about 160 million over the next 7 years. Actually, it should be already being spent, but the reality of the situation is that we're still waiting for the Commission to wake up from their summer siesta and sign off the national plans and allow money to start flowing. But they will flow, and that sum of money will be spent in our geography and across our geography, and you'll see that the detail of those plans are to stimulate growth, and also about a quarter of it is to help direct and stimulate mainstreaming of those who are on the periphery of our society. So if you think about it, national funding can be directed towards opportunity for growth predominantly. European funding quite often is focused on where the areas of need are. And so we have a social inclusion policy, and we'll be directing quite a lot of the funding towards upskilling and bringing people into the fold so that they have meaningful contribution to the society that they live within. So you can see that there's going to be some sizable sums of money. Yes, sir?
Sorry to interrupt you again, but will you be issuing a glossary of all the acronyms?
Well, yes, do you know, we probably have to issue a glossary of a glossary if we're talking about European funding. But what you can effectively say is that there are different streams. This deals with rural. This is predominantly, ESIF is revenue dealing with skills predominantly and social inclusion. And this is more the hard bit of it, where some capital can be utilised. But whichever way you view it, the most significant bit is this. We have plans working in conjunction with you which will specify where we're going to be focusing in on in terms of tackling issues that are relevant to us, relevant to society, relevant to our businesses and to our economy. And that's the good news. And we only spend it in conjunction with yourselves, and we work with government to ensure that, obviously, you probably imagine the amount of red tape we have to deal with both government and Europe. But we do that on your behalf. And in fact, the reality is you control it because you preside over the decisions over where that money goes. So it's as much your decision as it is the partnerships. And then, of course, this is just an example where we're very alert to the fact that we need to have the right types of skills in our workforce, and that we've got to ensure that, particularly our young, aspire to have the right type of skills and that they can attain their true potential in their future career. And of course, we've signed up to apprenticeships. In this last year, we've secured virtually 15,000 apprenticeships working with our partners. This is not just SEMLEB. And of course, we are mindful of the fact that quite a lot of the context within which apprenticeships are funded and the policies within which they're promoted are changing. Notwithstanding all that, we have got a target of reaching 95,000 staff by the year 2000. Because we are very very committed to ensuring that we do support the young talent that we do have that sometimes get marginalised into meaningful careers. And quite often that means, and should mean, vocational career paths for these people.
There was an article in the paper only yesterday, I think, that said there was a serious deficit, particularly in engineering, for example, of about 40% in young people coming into the industry.
Indeed.
And it may well be reflected in construction too, I gather, you know. So does this in actual fact, what is the catch-up rate in terms of the effect of this?
Well, as you probably appreciate only too well, the economy changes.
Yeah.
And actually the reality is that there's going to be a bigger deficit, and it's going to grow quite exponentially as the economy grows, because the demand for skills is going to be heightened, and of course it takes quite a long time to get the right skills profile within the workforce and out of the educational system.
That was one of the issues that was raised about this, is this bit of a time delay in terms of before this feeds through into the strength of
Yes, and you know, it's symptomatic.
It's very good, this. I'm very impressed with this. Yes.
It's symptomatic of the fact that we do have an economy that either is in stall mode or accelerating at great knots, and we don't seem to have that long-term balance. We don't seem to strike that balance terribly well in economic terms. And so, obviously, we come to what we're doing to help stimulate the economy as well, because one of the issues that we have, because we are a very small secretariat at the centre of this partnership, is if we're trying to stimulate economic growth and we're trying to work with our businesses, and we have 76,000 VAT-registered businesses, let alone the others who aren't VAT-registered, how on earth can we take a mandate from the business community and know what we should be doing? And so, inevitably, that requires us day in, day out to have engagement with businesses. So this morning there was a business breakfast event. I was there participating in it. Last night we had an envoy group for large businesses. I was there participating in it. Yes, you know, and so therefore you do whatever is necessary to ensure that you reach businesses, and we reach many thousands of businesses. But as a surplus to that, as an additional requirement to that, we also, on behalf of all our partners, we do one-to-one surveys with businesses. And so far, in the last 18 months that I've been with the organisation, we've done about 4,500 one-to-one business surveys. And the last tranche has been 1,500. And of course, all that data, which we pay for as a partnership, comes back to our constituent local partners. Yes, sir.
Can I ask, your business envoys and the survey, is that just solely a survey, or do you do any troubleshooting or anything like that from your envoys' point of view within those businesses?
Yes. Well, I'm very glad you raised that, because our detailed surveys, to begin with, the surveys are questions. They're not interactive. They're asking the question and trying to get some understanding of, if you like, a barometer of what the issues are within local businesses. What's happened is that 24% of businesses that we've surveyed have said that they are in need of a locally procured advisory service, a service that doesn't necessarily replicate, but is akin to what used to be called Business Link. Somebody they could actually speak to. What a novel idea, instead of just phoning and pressing numbers and so forth. Somebody they could actually speak to, and even better still, somebody they could see face to face. And so we took all that information, and our motto in our organisation, in the partnership, is we don't like to duplicate, and we don't like to replicate, and we don't like to displace. If the market provides a solution, well, why on earth would we want to try to do any of that? However, when we took the answers from the businesses and what they wanted, and we looked at the market to see if local businesses could phone a local advisor and meet with them and get the advice or the information or the guidance that they needed, and for it to be free of charge and independent, there was no such provision. And so as a consequence, we created something called Velocity, business support. So That's the branding. It's not the South East Midlands. We haven't called it the Growth Hub or whatever, which actually businesses don't even typically know what it means. We've actually said what it says is what it does. So we are a business support service. We are free to any business across our patch who can contact us by modern technology, through the internet, by telephone or face-to-face, and they can get the support and advice that they need. And that advice is working for the business. So it'll identify what the problem is. They'll identify whether nationally there are any support programs that can help that business. They will also work locally to ensure that the local offer is translated. And then we also have the means of utilising some funds that we've put into it as a partnership, our collective funds, to help the businesses where we know they can get to the next level, where we sense that they have a propensity to grow.
Does, in terms of the Federation of Small Businesses, I mean, Maxim Order, which you probably know about, but
Yes.
how does that work through to those businesses, which are basically SMEs, and perhaps, as you rightly say, the S bit of the SMEs, and how is that working in terms of, I mean, their great complaint we had was the fact they wanted access to more work being done by authorities, you know, and all the rest of it. They believe that often they were sort of squeezed out of the market by the bigger players, etc. We did discuss with the Chief Executive here, we discussed it in his council too, but I just wondered how you sort of viewed that kind of thing in your role in giving those businesses access to.
Again, you're raising very good questions. The overarching governance for this service.
That's just an advice service, is it?
Yeah, it's an advisory service. But this service is governed by a board, and that board has all the organisations, business organisations, who help steer what the service is and fine-tune it to make sure that it delivers what businesses want.
Okay, thank you.
So, for instance, you mentioned Maxine.
Maxine Order,
She's on the board.
Oh, she is. That's good. Interesting. Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Can you tell us, please, what kind of inquiries and what kind of help are you giving to these businesses, and have you spotted any patterns that you were able to
Thank you. Well, let me give you some examples. How it works is that we've taken on one manager who works essentially with me, and we've got 6 local advisors dealing with specific geographies. And in the Northamptonshire context, we've got 2 advisors who are dedicated to this geography. And those 2 advisors, the service so far in the last 6 months has reached, well, it's not us reaching, it's the businesses who've got some benefit from the service. It stands at just short of 7,000 now. Just short of 7,000 businesses. And my target that I've set for the service, which I thought was pretty demanding and pretty stretching, was 15,500. So I want to be able to provide support, meaningful support, to between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 of all the businesses that we have across the South East Midlands. That's my objective. And so far, these advisors in this locality, 134 businesses have received face-to-face advice, and this is intensive advice. This is not, hello, very nice to see you, let's clock it up another one. This is about spending hours with businesses. Our intensive support is a minimum of 6 hours, and you can see that we've given some grants also to some businesses to stimulate some growth, but it's not about grants. All businesses are not just chasing money. They're chasing, and they really appreciate the advice and guidance we're giving them.
Do you actually, for example, because you can put like a consultancy value on that, perhaps?
We can, but
not sell it to them.
Yes.
So you can have it as the kind of extra value that you're adding. Well, if they're to go to a consultant for that kind of advice, it might cost them a great deal more. And that's the kind of amplification of value.
There is a great deal of amplification, but the real amplification that we're after is for those businesses to realise that they can grow, and with the right advice and stimulus, that they do grow, and they take on new apprenticeships, they take on new employees, they invest in the locality, and they achieve their goals of reaching more markets, utilising our logistics, getting international trade going, and so forth, and become bigger. Because it's that growth that we're trying to stimulate here. I mean, yes, we can capture the value of what service we're providing them, but ultimately the driver here is to stimulate our economic growth.
This is the concept of leverage, essentially, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to put it into context here, so far 106 jobs, 25 jobs safeguard, but you know, those are just numbers. To me, in some respects, those are an irrelevance. It's about the support that we're giving businesses to realise that they can grow, and giving them the helping hand that they need to grow. And critically, we just launched, with the help of the business minister, Matthew Hancock, 56 workshops. 56 workshops. They're 3-hour intensive workshops by leaders in the field. And of those, 27 of them are going to be held at the Icon Innovation Centre and a couple of other centres in this locality. 3-hour sessions, free of charge to businesses. And so those services alone, those 27, will reach at least 500 businesses in this locality, to give them the intensive assist to realise how they could be doing business better, and to take the opportunities that this modern economy presents them to grow and to recognise their full potential. So that's just an example of what we're doing on behalf of our wider partnership. So in conclusion, Chair, we are a partnership, and our strength is the fact that we work as a partnership, and we are open, and we are engaging, and we are transparent. There's nothing that we do that is in a back room somewhere. Everything is transparent. Everything is translated onto our websites. Our meetings are open. All our partners participate. Joint decisions about what we do, how we do it, and where we should do it. And of course, we work in a geography that is quite complicated. But do you know what? We live in a complicated world, and I'm not after neatness, I'm after effectiveness. I want to know that the partnership delivers something tangible. It doesn't matter to me whether we have to deal with some issues, whether they're geographically or otherwise generated. The fact is, I want results as much as any of you desire results for your locality, for your communities, and for your businesses. And then, of course, the critical thing is that all partners are equal, at least in our partnership. So the fact that you have been an integral part of our partnership from day one, from when we were set up, and you remain so, and that you have committed not only your leadership, but also some of your resources and your officer time to help us understand and to know where to intervene in the market has been very much appreciated and is very much recognised. And indeed so much so that your leadership has also given us great weight in Westminster, indeed coming and negotiating on behalf of the partnership for some of the deals that we've made with the ministers, literally face to face across the table, eyeballing the ministers in a fashion that I couldn't possibly have done myself. And so clearly, we do mean business, and we are very grateful for your committed interest. Yes, sir.
Sorry to stop your flow, but you just said minister, which then reminds me that in May 2015 we could have a change of government.
Indeed.
If we do, where will you be?
Okay. Well, again, it's an interesting point. This is our understanding, and they say, forget about months. A week is a long period in politics. But the current administration has put down a marker to say that they will make a provision of $2 billion in funding terms to LEPs every year up to 2020, and that is a commitment that they've made. So the first question is, will the current administration come back in? Because if it does, up to 2020, we know where the monies are going to be coming from, as a minimum. Other parties who are not currently in government and potentially might or might not be in government have likewise matched that, but in actual fact, they've also overpromised and said they will provide even greater sums. So the reality is, as far as we're concerned, from a local enterprise partnership, I think that government has finally recognised, particularly in the context of having abolished the regional development agencies, that they lost a lot of credibility, particularly amongst the private sector. private sector were very much embroiled with the regional development agencies, and now that we've just about mustered all the private sector engagement back into local enterprise partnerships, whoever comes into power will not throw that away. So pretty much local enterprise partnerships, at least for the foreseeable future, bearing in mind we've just been given, in our case, 160 million up to 2021, are here to stay. And that's the importance of the partnership working, at least for that period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I think that's been very helpful for members who didn't know enough much about seminars. It's a very quickly, Nigel.
Will you have any involvement with the High Street Rail all coming through Northampton?
Well, again, it's an interesting issue because we have a stance which is we reflect on the practicality of any policy. So if a policy is going to impose an investment, then we deal with what the consequences could or should be. So we don't lobby on certain issues in favour or against some things happening, and High Speed 2 is certainly one of those issues. But certainly where we recognise some of the weaknesses, for instance in east-west rail connectivity and so forth, we've been working terribly hard to ensure that we have the right type of investment in that, or for that matter, electrification of railway lines or whatever it might be. So where it's in our inherent interest in locality terms, we will push for whatever policies we need. More national policies where they might have an implication for us, we deal with the reality of, is that likely to happen, and if it is, how can we best extract the benefit for the locality? Because there are some things that we're not a political partnership in that sense. We are an economic development agency, and we obviously function and exist within the realms of policy that are made elsewhere sometimes.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nigel, for that. Thank you for your presentation. We do appreciate it. Will copies of that be sent to us so we can forward it to all members?
They're with you. They may be circulated.
So we can circulate to all members of our team.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very much indeed, Dan.
Thank you very much.
All right, we move on to the minutes of the last meeting held on the 4th of September. Are you happy I sign them off as a correct record?
Agreed.
Apologies for absence. Senator order of statement. Right. Russia's here instead, yeah. And also Wayne Howard put his apologies in this morning. Thank you. Declarations of members' interests. Please declare them now or not now at the time the item comes up on the agenda. We move on then to the first substantive item today, which is housing and environmental health issues. And this is one I know dear to the heart of my deputy leader. Community collective energy switching campaign. Councillor Warren.
I think it's actually
Dan, my point,
yeah, it's one of these strange ones that it crosses over a little bit.
Crosses over.
It crosses over. I mean, it's
It's
something
quite
that
a
I've
switching
been.
with, isn't it? That's quite helpful.
Yeah, that's right. Switching over. Yeah,
Switching over.
it's a double act. It's a double act. Double act.
Well, we know that.
Yeah, it's something that sort of largely falls within the environment stuff, and it also has a health issue as well, which I'll ask Mike if he wants to say anything about that later on. But people are going to be given the opportunity to save money on electricity bills with a new collective switching scheme that we're proposing to launch later in the year. The Council's teaming up with the UK's leading collective switching expert, iTuber, in a bid to help residents join forces to get a better deal for their gas and electricity prices. A lot of people obviously complain about the prices of electricity and gas. It is quite a complex thing for people to change, even though there's a lot of comparison websites and things out there. People often have the inertia, they don't want to go out there and try and find a cheaper deal, they'd just rather stay where they are. But this particular scheme is set to launch in December. It'll be a free scheme, and you'll see residents will be invited to register a collective energy switching scheme with all the energy companies bidding, as it were, in an auction to be the ones that gain all the people at the end of the auction. Now, the cheapest tariff offered will win, and everyone registered with the scheme will then be sent details and how much more they could save together with a no obligation offer switch. So you don't have, if you want to sign up to this, you don't have to actually go ahead with it at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, there will be a system where a collective switch will be available to our public if they want to go ahead. So what this brief report basically says tonight is that the recommendation is that the effectiveness of the collective energy switching campaign be reviewed after the initial 2014-15 auction in December. So it's not asking us to make any final decisions on tonight. It's just the case that we'll come back to strategy group at a later stage once that auction has taken place.
Thanks, Daniel. Can I just a clarification of office maybe we start then. On the page 7, I picked this up only before the meeting actually.
Yeah.
It says there, recommendation of accountability RGA collective energy switch scheme run by a chooser. And it doesn't say that in the recommendation then.
No, it doesn't, does it?
No, it doesn't.
So it's the effective
recommendation.
collective, whereas
Ignore page 7 reference,
yeah.
Sorry?
Ignore the page 7 reference.
I know that one. Okay, thank you.
So take the one on under
I know,
paragraph
the
2.
one there already, that's what I was going to do. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. That's anything, Mike?
Well, I just think this initiative could have a great benefit to the health and well-being of communities, with the possible benefit of lower utility bills. That's really it, really.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Campbell.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I think this is an excellent initiative. I'm sure everyone will remember that it was about a year ago Labour Council put in a motion about fuel poverty, and it's quickly defeated, but it's good to see it's back on the agenda in a different guise. I have just a couple of queries. One, how a scheme like this would affect people on prepayment meters, which often have the least competitive rates and the most difficult to switch. So I just wanted to check how it would affect them. I also wondered about what we're doing to make sure that there is the maximum take-up. Because I think when the June auction happened, 60 councils took part, 3,966 households switched, which was about fewer than 70 per council, I think. So I'd just be interested to see what measures are going to be put in place to make sure that we maximise the uptake. And then also I live in Broadston, obviously, which is mainly dependent on oil. I just wondered whether there was an opportunity to think about what we're doing in terms of collective buying of oil. I know Lobco is a very successful example.
Yes.
So just wondered whether that could be part of this conversation.
Well, that's a number of villages actually have to rely on oil.
Indeed.
Maria, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I'll take those in order,
Thank you.
Chairman. Yes, prepayment meters are not excluded, so we will be able to sign up people whether they're on whatever categories they're on. We will do an awful lot of promoting in the next, because it's between December and February. It's a period we have to sign people up and then we go out to the market. So we'll be doing an awful lot of work to promote that through parishes, through all the community voluntary sector and through councils. So that's the number of it really, getting the message out there for people to do the initial sign up. There's online sign up, which is obviously the one that we hope to get to the majority of people out there, but we will be training up our call centre so that they can help people with the offline sign up. So we'll be doing that manually for them effectively.
Well, that's very helpful
to get
actually.
the numbers up. There's a big project internally, and it's gas and electric or electric only for people. So there won't be any, because there's 50 odd of our villages don't have gas. So this actual for iTunes for this actual project, it is electric only or electric and gas. It doesn't include collective purchasing of oil or anything at the moment. But if something comes along, we're still keeping a watching brief on the market.
What about this scheme in the district already? Actually, I seem to remember. Councillor Charter, on the oil.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can certainly confirm that YOPCO, although the Y stands for Yalvatov, does actually spread its tentacles very far and very wide down to the southwest of the country. And that has been very successful. And even we like it who live next door. Couple of points I wanted to make. One is that members may have noticed a news item recently that Plymouth City Council has tied up with a particular supplier, OVO Energy. Now, you may not have heard of OVO Energy, but they're a sort of web-based only organisation. They don't have a lot of office overheads and infrastructure overheads. I looked into them very carefully, and as a result of that, I actually switched to OVO, and it's saving me over £350 a year, and that's got to be worth doing. So, okay, I burn a lot of electricity, but one thing that nearly put me off, and you might get this query from people, is that Western Networks, or whatever they call themselves these days, it used to be the East Midlands Electricity Board, did send a letter around some time ago to their customers offering to fit a smart meter free and easy. And I was wondering whether all energy suppliers were committed to that, because a smart meter can actually help people to reduce their consumption, which is clearly part of the key, not only to saving money, but helping to save the planet.
Certainly whenever we've come across any schemes providing them and promoted them, but they've been picked up in a small scale locally, that we haven't been able to promote anything wide scale at this point.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor
I think the point made by Alan Charlton, Councillor Charlton, was that if you just say £350, for example, if you want people to sign up to things, you've really got to be able to illustrate, not that it can be done, these are the charges for signing up, etc., which often frightens people, even are modest in that, but in actual fact, the benefit they get from it in terms of, typically, for this house or that kind of house, you may well be in the order of something. I think you might find that people who perhaps are happy to engage in these kinds, but they actually have some idea exactly what the savings are. Now, it's no good saying that it's going to be 7.5% of this and that. I can't even work out percentages. All people just want to know, like you just said, it's £300 a year sounds like a good idea to me, or £150 a year depending upon. So maybe that's some information that's not sorry, it doesn't have to be in this report, but something that needs to go out in the community. Do we know anything? I need to put figures out. Do we know anything on that?
we need to just really, what you're really saying, Councillor Earl, is make clarity about the offer base.
Make an exciting prospect.
That's the point. That's the point taken on board.
Certainly, it depends how many people. The more people get to sign up, the better our bulk purchasing power is, and the better schemes are likely to be provided to each individual household.
No, but I'm sorry, I don't understand that, but what I'm trying to get around to is to get people to, because you're going to jump the first hurdle. It's a good idea to give an indication. You know? When you sell a motor car, you say it does 35 miles to the gallon. It might do that, but it depends how many you buy. You know, it's to do with really giving an indication. I think that there are some fairly direct benefits. And Alan just mentioned that £350 typically. You know.
The high energy.
From that company, you know.
Okay, I think the point's made. I think we recognise the point.
Anything that will get more people to reconsider where they buy their electricity is bound to get them a better price. Electricity switching, or if we're doing their own shopping around, so it's all positive.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Paul?
No, sorry.
My apologies. Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Chair. Why stop at households? Can it not be extended to small businesses?
This particular scheme is only domestic. It's only for households.
I know it's not vulnerable, but I thought the more the merrier, so businesses would be involved.
Yeah, if we come across any small businesses, because we've been watching this sector for some time, and this is the first time we're going to go ahead with one.
Thank you. Are we happy to accept the recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to some of the economic regeneration employment issues. It's the Rural Transport Scrutiny and Improvement Task Panel report. I'm pleased to see that Councillor Morgan was the chair of this this evening, along with Councillor Cameron, who's on the strategy group, who's part of that panel. I'll hand over to Councillor.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I'm talking about the report on page 9 of 41, and that's received with advice there that further consideration are given to the preparation of rural transport strategy when the recommendations arising from the scrutiny and improvement task panel Council for the economic role are available. So we haven't really got apparently any town material at the moment. And the Council directed for existing public transport services and partnership with bus companies on the road. Well, I think yes, we certainly would want to be supporting that. When I looked at and you can obviously will have read this report, when I looked at the investigation report in actual fact, and we know about things like that, and I think Alan here, Councillor Charlton was speaking about some schemes that operate within the villages which have been successful. We obviously want to do everything to make certain that we can connect our businesses, but one of the things that is a great problem, of course, is that you can put things in place, but you can take horses to water, but you can't make them drink in terms of do they always use a service that's on board, and therefore there are, as it were, sort of cost problems arising that come out of this kind of thing. But you see the recommendation, the Council builds on the plans of the task panel for experiencing a rural transport policy, and I don't need to read that out, I think you can obviously read it for yourself. But they do come ultimately to a conclusion, I think, somewhere. Can we find it? Yes. Transport shapes the lives of many people to a very great extent in our rural district. It's a complex topic with many strands, issues, potential solutions. Full investigation is required in order to develop a rural transport policy which enhances the lives of residents and our communities. Well, I think we all agree with that, but it doesn't in actual fact illustrate clearly that if you do this, then in actual fact we are starting to produce a solution to the degree of isolation that many people feel they live in rural communities. So yes, as far as us having a strategy is concerned, I personally believe we have to have a strategy. We want to make certain as far as we can that we connect villages up and the people within the villages as effectively as possible. But we have limited budgets, and subsidising these things is something that, in actual fact, the report says that would have to give us considerable difficulty. So we have the members of the task panel here, and what have you. They might like to reflect on some of their findings and, as it were, fill in the gaps. Is that possible?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Councillor, who wants to go first? The gentleman, Councillor.
Well,
Councillor Campbell. People listening to this get confused. Councillor Campbell speaking.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I had a couple of points. One was a sort of procedural question. I sat in I did assist with the production of the rural transport report, assisted Councillor Frenchman, and I attended the scrutiny meeting at which we presented the draft report. And it was very clearly, from my recollection, officers' advice that the next best step would be to invite the council to take on the development of a strategy or policy to do with rural transport. And that is why the recommendation was quite clearly that an officer would take on the initial recommendations and the initial findings that we have been able to undertake as individual councillors acting for the scrutiny group. So I think it's quite a surprise to find the tables turned and it's sent back to scrutiny, really. I think it seems to be quite a fundamental difference of approach as to how scrutiny works and the role of scrutiny councillors taking part in reports. And I think we need to debate that tonight and get to the heart of it. And then the just wider observation, it seems to me that there's a sense in which we're trying to wriggle out of our responsibilities to deliver effective rural transport strategies. This report makes quite clear the difference between NCC's duties and DDC's powers, but they are powers that we do exercise, and they are powers exercised in a way that I find, talking to residents, think very little of. And I think certainly the way we've managed to manage 106 agreements, for instance, which have taken bus routes away from well-served areas and now mean that young people, for instance in Braunton, but not exclusively, have to take 2 buses to get to schools over the border and get home very late and leave very early because of this council making a decision how to spend a 106 agreement on a rural transport provision. So it seems to me we can't wriggle out of these decisions. We are making them. We are accountable for them. And we might like to pass it back to NCC whenever it suits us, but it's not viable. And the perception in local communities is that we are not managing rural transport effectively. And I think this is a very important issue that we need to do much more with, and not just shilly-shally about whose responsibility it is, and send it back to whence it came from. Thank you.
I mean, there have been some examples like BB7 where, of course, the provision has been made, but it hasn't been utilised, and therefore it's really trying to direct underused provision to areas where the provision will be utilised. And I think things like that do come to mind. But in terms of the advice here, are we accepting the advice?
No, not there yet, Councillor. I've got some more speakers.
Right, okay.
So very much. I want to, Sam Bowles, can you just clarify on the section 106 which Councillor Campbell related to regarding bus services, for instance?
I can, Chairman. I think, if I may, I'll just comment in Councillor Campbell's previous point, which is about duties and powers. Yeah. It is a fact that under the Transport Act 1985, the County Council has a duty to provide services if it does so necessary. That duty does not extend to district councils such as DDC. In relation to 106, NCC has, in most cases, virtually all cases, taken the lead. And indeed, the very case Councillor Campbell is referring to, NCC led that entire process and did manage to get some influence later on in it, but it was not able to change the overall pattern of when NCC and the Warwickshire were working together was determined to deliver.
Thank you, Sam, for that clarification. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I actually asked, I think Councillor Campbell had her hand up before me anyway, and such is the power of scrutiny, I rarely found myself completely agreeing with Councillor Campbell on this one. And this obviously came through my committee, and yes, indeed, officers' advice was, look, you brought it to the table. This is the role of the officers to shape this into a strategy, or at least a semblance of a strategy to bring forward to this committee. It actually, I must say, I was quite surprised when I read the first recommendation. It took me a couple of reads before I actually comprehended what it actually said. And I think it's bordering on the gobbledygook in actual fact. We're actually talking about further consideration shall be given to the preparation. It sounds like an episode of Yes Minister. I mean, are we actually proposing here a recommendation where we may consider something a bit later on, where we might consider preparing a document? I think if you contrast this with the similar presentation we've just had, I think it lacks passion, lacks desire to commitment, and lacks actually the bother to do anything about this issue whatsoever. So I'm quite disappointed in it. I think our role in scrutiny has been to sharpen up these when they come out, so they can actually have, so they're not wishy-washy when they come out of scrutiny. But I think this has been for a mangler and it's come out a bit of a mess, quite frankly, and I'm not happy with it.
Well, I think
the second option.
I think there's a disconnect there between the scrutiny report coming out and obviously the portfolio holder. We'll come back to in a minute. Councillor Guildford.
Thank you. I totally support the two previous speakers on this. I have raised several concerns in this chamber before now on rural transport. I'd like to ask a question, please, if I may, because it talks about on page 14 the bus service funded through the Midmore Section 106 agreements of the workers' bus. Where does this workers' bus go? Does it just go to Daventry or does it go further afield? I'd also like to ask about, again, the County Connect. Talking from my ward, you know, our bus services have been halved. The County Connect service put in place, as it says in the report, doesn't work. We try to use it, just doesn't work. We can't just talk about shall we do it, shan't we do it. We need to use what powers or little powers we have, or what influencing skills we have to get help within our rural ward on the bus routes, etc.
Well, I think it's important actually local members lobby their county councillor if they have an issue about rural transport, which the county council provides on the whole. I think it's very important they lobby the county council to make sure that message goes up to the county about dissatisfaction of rural services in their patch. If that's the case, I'm saying.
Yes,
because obviously we're not actually responsible for delivering rural bus services. I mean, that's the point. This is where we have a paper here in the district council, because obviously it's very relevant to district ward members about rural transport. I know myself, a rural ward now, the 50s, and that is this. So I think the key thing here is it's about, if you want to change something, we have to make sure we have the right channels, the right opportunities to actually lobby for all members, whichever party they come from, on their patch. And if they don't think what's not working in their patch, they must lobby for their county councillor and the county council direct. And if this becomes a bigger issue, then maybe we as a council might need to lobby as well. But I think the point is it's getting the evidence, because sometimes subjective evidence is one thing and reality is another. And also the number of people who use bus services can actually, the receptions can be quite low sometimes. It doesn't mean there aren't people in villages who need those bus services. I come across that myself. So I think what I'm trying to get out of this, at the moment, the recommendation from Councillor Herbert is a bit unclear about the next stage.
Just the lack of evidence base that we need to...
So is it a case you're asking scrutiny and improvement to go back with the evidence base to get some more evidence? Sorry, of course you can.
I think the point is here, what you've actually managed to do is wrap it up in another scrutiny assignment, which is forthcoming in due course. But actually, I think what I have some, I mean, I wouldn't mind actually if you said, look, this is just not going to happen. This is just not within our bailiwick, and we'll just have a look at how the council can actively promote. But I think the way the first one is written is deliberately obfuscating the issue. And I think I feel like we're being forwarded by the wording, and that further consideration shall be given to the preparation. Does that mean one will be prepared or it won't be prepared? Will it be prepared when we get our skates on and provide a rural economic strategy? And actually, if it's just a case of saying we can have a look at it when that one comes along, so we can have a look at them in conjunction, then that makes clear sense. But I think there's something slightly disingenuous about the way the recommendations written. I'm very sorry to have to say that.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just ask Sam Barrett, sorry, to just comment on it?
Not councillor.
No. I should have said it says not yet.
There was certainly no intention to, I haven't said the word anyway, that's the one. It is simply the case that we've been presented with an SNI report that doesn't give any indication of the scale of the alleged issue. And therefore, given the council has a budgetary and policy framework, officers are committed to delivering that, it was difficult to see how we could justify dedicating officer resource to prepare something when there's no clarity about what the issue was. My hope was that when we have the SNI economic report, and this SNI report is clear that it's the part of an economic issue that's being addressed, it will give us more of an evidence base so we can see that there was a case to say to council, you need to allocate resources to this area of activity. As it is, I have a local strategy team which is overwhelmed, principally actually by dealing with speculative housing applications, and a construction and development service which is extremely busy delivering on the council's existing priorities. And it will be a choice for council as to whether we stop doing some of that or we add additional resources in order to prepare a strategy.
Thank you, Simon, for that clarification. Councillor Charter.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a subject very dear to my heart because of the 8 parishes I represent. I think only one of them ever sees a bus, and that's about 3 times a week. The County Connect service is not our responsibility, but I just thought that members should know that when I spoke in Northampton to a meeting which was being addressed by David Farquhar, who I think holds the premier responsibility in county, about this, and I said that it doesn't work, and I explained how I knew that, he called me a liar, which I thought was not really very professional of him at all. However, we conducted a survey in Yolgotov of all the people about their transport difficulties, and the reason I'm suggesting that is that survey could be made freely available to others. So if other ward members would like to see it, or perhaps somebody would take the responsibility of making it more general, and then it could be distributed to all the parishes. You could get all the answers back from the parishes, and you'd have a data set which was comparable, and that might help you to build on the next step.
Build the evidence base up.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Guilford.
I note the word alleged, but it's fact that our bus services have been cut. It's fact that the Connect service doesn't work. It's fact that residents in my ward are unable to gain employment because of the insufficient bus service and the poor take-up of the bus service that's in place. Maybe I can throw light on one of the reasons for the poor take-up is that residents in my village, if they go on the one bus, it's so long before you get a bus back that they're stranded almost. If they're going into Daventry. I know we want them stranded here to spend their money going up gaps, etc. But that is one reason for the poor uptakes that I can say about.
Thank you, Councillor Guilford. I'm sure some of those points will be covered. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. When I first read the report when it came through to scrutiny, I was quite interested because I learned quite a lot that I didn't know about. And on page 14, the last 3 paragraphs, it sets out that NCC does have a duty, but also that DDC is free to subsidise and introduce new bus routes. So I saw that actually they would be playing a key part with the county council to introduce the bus routes. That actually we've got far more knowledge about the bus routes that we would need in our district than what the county council would. I listened on the radio in Northampton earlier in the week, and it was talking about bus routes over in Northampton. And that hasn't worked at all. NCC haven't consulted with Stagecoach to look at bus routes. So I thought, looking at this, I thought, that's good, that at least we can be a key player to work with NCC. And I think that's what I understood one of the recommendations was, to be a key player, to be a driver.
Well, thanks, Wendy, but we'll come back on that point, I'm sure. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak, not being a member of your scrutiny committee.
Scrutiny committee? Strategy group.
Sorry?
Strategy group.
Strategy committee. I do apologise. It's been a long week. Confusion reigns, Chairman. We started off talking about page 9 and the 2 recommendations on there. Many councillors have switched to page 14, which is clearly the second item on the agenda. Could we stick to the first item? And
it's all part of the same.
Sorry?
It's all part of the same agenda.
Part of the same agenda.
It's all part of the same item.
Well, could we have a decision on the first part first? It was not made clear at the beginning of this meeting that we were going to be discussing the two of them together.
The point is, Colin, the 2 recommendations is based upon the report by the Scrutiny Committee, which is the paper you're referring to, which forms part of the overall recommendation.
It's not an item on this agenda.
Chair, if I may, it's very clear. From page 12 onwards, this is the report that came from scrutiny. The reason why I'm being so passionate about this in my articulation is because it was my committee that made these recommendations you can see on page 12. Yeah. And then they go through the machinery, and then they come out, as you can see on page 9. And I think the problem you're having, Councillor Paul, is you can't see the similarity between the two. Well, and that's the point that we're making. There's barely any similarity between the two. So the mystery is how you could leave our committee looking like this and arrive here looking like this.
With respect, I can see the similarity between the two, but it would be for the benefit of all the cameras and all the people watching to answer one recommendation first. My personal opinion, if that grates, then I do apologise.
I think the challenge we're having here is because they actually came out as, essentially 3 recommendations, 1A, 1B and then 2. You can't really necessarily look at them as taking them as single recommendations because at first impression you think they've been conflated, but in actual fact they've been completely modified. In fact, actually, if I was going to make a recommendation, Chair, what I would actually say is I would accept, whilst we never actually spoke about the rural economic strategy, which of course hasn't yet been started because our colleague Councillor Perry hasn't yet made a start on it. We've actually got the issue whereby that may be some time. It may well be acceptable that we could actually say that preparation of a rural transport strategy will be embarked upon, or what have you, when we have the recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee with the rural economic strategy. That might make some sense because they make a coherent pair. And then perhaps we could make a modification to that, but accept the second one, because I think the second one still has, of course, merit in terms of an active role.
Right, so we'll come back to that as well, Colin. Thank you for that. Councillor Osborne.
I must just make the point in Longbottom's case, I think we've got a pretty fair service, to be quite honest. As a parish council a while ago, we did a lot of complaining because we were lobbied by bus users or people interested in the bus service, and we did a lot of lobbying to county council about not cutting bus services, and we want better provision. We got involved quite deeply in it with county, and to be honest, we came out with egg on our faces. The ones that they wanted to cut were coming 10 miles with one person on it, or 10 miles with nobody on it. And I honestly now believe that we've got the service that is used, where you see a queuing up for a bus in the morning to come to Daventry. They can get back from Daventry. We have a good service every morning to Rugby, and people go to shopping Rugby because they don't like Northampton. Yeah. And we get buses at the right time and the right time back when they're used anyway, during the day. One can always want more bus services in the rural areas, but we found out that we looked pretty damn stupid when we were finding there was one person using it or nobody using it, and it was travelling empty for miles. But
okay, that's a fair point. I'm going to come back to you last, Councillor, because obviously you're the first in the recommendation.
Sorry, please continue.
Let's go Councillor Chandler first.
Yes, just to respond to that last contribution, I I don't recognise that as the real world of the rural community.
It's long rugby.
Yeah, exactly. It's long rugby.
Richard's got a
Exactly, but we've got no service at all. And just to warn you, it's the kind of thing you're up against. One of the factors used to me to prove that the system was meeting the demand was there has been no take-up in the free bus passes in your ward, and therefore we don't need the bus. And of course there are no take-up of the bus passes because there are no buses. It's really that simple.
Thank you.
Chicken and egg again.
Councillor Guildford.
I do agree with the Councillor Osborne that you do need to look at bus routes. I do know in my village when we had the consultation, we did have the queues, we did have the bus usage. But what a consequence of all the bus routes they cut was that they then used another bus route, taking them out Banbury way. So that was taking residents out of the district. So, you know, we ought to look through the eyes of that if we're wanting to promote and develop Daventry as well.
Councillor Guildford, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're almost getting distracted from the heart of the debate, because it seems to me that we all have opinions about rural transport. There seems to be an overwhelming majority of the people speaking who think there are challenges facing people using rural transport in the district, and that the district council has a role to play, a bigger role to play than it does at the moment. The question is, if we all agree more research needs to be done, more evidence needs to be provided in order to shape this report, who does the next thing? I think that's what we need. That's what we need to decide. And we were, as I said at the beginning, we were very clear that it was an officer-led next step, and officers are suggesting to us that they don't have the capacity or the time to reprioritise the council's priorities to address what we all think is very important. So it seems to be quite a crux of an issue that's what we need to be talking about.
Well, we'll come back to it in a minute. Councillor Campbell, I just want to get the speakers. Councillor Warren first.
I'd just like to say that when the bus companies do cut the service, they ought to consult the community when they do so.
Yes.
I had a situation in Over where they cut an early morning bus, which was the only one at that particular time, then took the parishioner, took the constituents, and got them into Malton to the doctor's surgery. That particular bus service was cut, no communication with the community, and that's gone. So the people in Over now have to find their own way to get into Malton, but no communication at all.
Okay. I come back to Councillor Over to summarise, but what I'm picking up here is two things. The second recommendation seems to be fairly straightforward. It's around the first recommendation you've got before you. And I think there's a number of strands here. One is about, if you're going to do a piece of work, you need the evidence, and that's the point about how much work to put into that. And if our officers are saying they haven't got the capacity, that's an issue that maybe the chair has to talk to the chief executive about. The second point I would also say is it's about informing the county council. If we get evidence to say what might make things better, we should inform the county council of that. That, to my mind, would appear totally appropriate. To say, our research has shown, you as the responsible body, this is feedback we're giving you that might be able to improve or not improve, or the services that are available out there. That appears to me to be entirely reasonable. I just wonder what your thoughts are, Councillor.
No, well, I don't disagree with that, and I think there's, I'll tell you, it's been good to hear a debate taking place. There's some things that, in some cases, I was not aware of, but I think the one thing we do need to have is an evidence base, and I think, therefore, communications with the parish councils, quite clearly, on the basis, what is the demand like to be in your particular village? I mean, take the long Buckley situation, well, they have the critical mass, and that will have a critical mass, which means it's reasonably attractive to put on bus services. But when you have odd few people, and then quite clearly the economics of it start to go down the drain, even though there's no reason why they should not be able to access places like Daventry, Banbury, or else they want to go. So I think what we do need to say, in actual fact, that we do want to have a look at this rural strategy and actually re-examine this rural strategy, and if the route to do it is by sending it back in active scrutiny and ask them to do that and get evidence based on the parish councils or any other source that is available, and in a cooperative approach between Daventry District and NCC, but in the end we hope that we might deliver some more satisfactory outcomes than you actually have at the moment. And I would be happy for that to be the sort of way we move forward. But I refer to either the chief executive or yourself if you're comfortable with that.
Can I just ask?
It matters to everyone.
Can I just ask the chair and Councillor Morgan first about this issue that Councillor Campbell raises about the outcome that's come out of this? Because obviously you're saying that your report hasn't really been reflected in the recommendation before us tonight. I'm just wondering, what do you want, Councillor Morgan, in terms, I mean, was this premature bringing this forward in its current state on the first recommendation, not the second one?
Chair, no, I don't think it was premature. We spent quite a bit, the task panel spent quite a bit of time looking at it. It was a very interesting topic area for us because it was an underlying need. And we analysed it as we do, without fear or favour. And it's unfortunate that Councillor Frenchman isn't here this evening as the chair, because he put a great deal of work in it with the support of Councillor Campbell. And we trust me, we do have a very hearty debate and a rigorous challenge of these things coming forward. And our objective has always been to get them into a relatively smart set of objectives when they come out. Actually, we support from the officers to say, our position is not to write the strategy. It will then go to a portfolio holder for further consideration and shaping, etc. Which is why I felt that the first one was disingenuous. If it is a case whereby we say this is not directly under our area of control, but under our sphere of influence, then in actual fact we need to go back and say, actually, we haven't got the time to develop the strategy and the policy around this. That would be fine. I'd accept that almost, because we say, this is, I don't understand why this is the case. But actually what we've got here is it's a kind of sort of filibustering approach. That's why I would recommend back to the portfolio order, if you could change the wording subtly so it left it open, maybe even then send it back to scrutiny for further analysis. I'm not sure we have the tools to do the analysis, but what we're really looking for is a more, a bit like we saw earlier really, a more forthright position, a more assertive position from the district council when it comes to looking after the public transport needs of the people in our community. And that's why I recommended that we perhaps look at the word on the recommendation to be something like along the lines of that the preparation of a rural strategy stroke core policy, choose the word, will commence, and here might give you some time if we need it, when the recommendations arising from the S&I task panel on the Council's rural economic role strategy are available and then can be taken as a pair. Now that might make sense, because we could actually deal with them as a coherent couplet, and you could say we link these together to further evidence our position. That might give you the time you need, and obviously we can take that back on board when we're looking at the economic role in the rural communities. But I think it would be a damn sight better than what we have here, which is a bit of a nonsense, quite frankly.
Can I just ask you, Morgan, in terms of the makeup of the panel, there are 2 members on there, which I find quite extraordinary for a subject obviously we've seen tonight a lot of people have an interest in.
Yeah.
So would that be helpful to have a larger panel in future where you have a theme which obviously is of interest to a lot of members? If you get more than 2 views, you get a number of views. I'm just asking the question, if I have the right answer.
Certainly, Chair, it's a good question. Now, what we've done under the past 12 months, we wanted to make sure we can execute them in a timely manner. Right. But also give them due consideration. Now, I think it really is a case here of not quantity but quality. And you could have, what tends to happen, the larger the group, if they find they need to meet or they don't divide tasks suitably, it takes a long period of time to get through the work. And in actual fact, what we've been doing is actually having smaller task panels. So this one is 2, but they've drawn on evidence and interviews from the research that they've conducted. But actually, when it comes through to the committee itself, we dedicate quite a lot of time to debate and exploring issues. And of course, don't forget, they don't just come once, they sometimes come at an interim stage as well. So they are thoroughly well debated, analysed for the effectiveness. So I don't think actually the issue here is not the way the recommendations have left the panel. It's not the quality of the analysis or the methodology by which Councillor Frenchman has led the work. It's actually the rather half-hearted recommendation, which is slightly disingenuous and comes to stretch, I think, is the point.
Well, thank you for that. The second question from me, and I'll let Councillor Gilbin in a second, is the issue. I'll let Councillor Gilbin first.
Only that, the second recommendation is using council resources to actively promote existing public transport services. I hear what Councillor Osborne is saying, it's work in Longbury, but it doesn't in a lot of villages across the district. So if it's best use of resources, should you not divert the resources to producing a strategy and then promote afterwards?
Good point, that's a good point. The other question on the back of that is, should we actually be putting resource into developing the strategy, or should we actually be lobbying or influencing the actual body responsible?
Well, Chair, in actual fact, that could be the strategy. I mean, the strategy doesn't. I don't know what you think a strategy is.
No,
the strategy could be a one-page document which says this is, starts with our policy, and this is one of the things we're going to do. Right. This is why, in some respects, this makes what is relatively straightforward quite overcomplicated. And again, it's about obfuscation. If we simply adopt a simple strategy and then we lobby, it's a case of we use narrow influence appropriately.
But it is also linked to an economic strategy for the rural area too. So there are areas of employment in that, and also in terms of in terms of economic strategy for the rural areas. And actually, I think encourage business in the rural areas. It isn't only the ones like being places like the satellite villages, the larger ones, which can be the centre for business. But we do know there are people in other villages and other settlements in actual fact who carry weight in economic strategy. And when you get things like the agricultural economy diversifying, therefore redundant buildings and things like that are being used for offices and for other purposes. I just use that as an example. Horticulture and all those kind of things. Then quite clearly having a transport system that also links up in an economic sense to make certain that some of those things are viable. I think in terms of employment, not just visitors employment, I think that perhaps also be not seriously given attention. And you may say, well, I'm now shooting myself in the foot.
No, I want to soften a bit the actual recommendation. Councillor Hills, you have your hand up.
I'm happy with two today.
Listening to it, I think that you don't need, to my way of thinking, pages and pages of strategy. You just need a short document that says this is what we're going to do. So I think that will make it a lot simpler. And I think also another way that you can look to move this forward, I think you've definitely got to engage with the county council. I think if I was right, I would be looking at the cabinet member for transport at the county council, Michael Clark, and asking for some answers from him. So that's the way I would play it.
That's interesting actually, because when you think about it, maybe the scrutiny panel could have called Councillor Clark to be questioned about it, and therefore you may have got some direct answers off the county. I just want
Chair, we did have quite wide-ranging conversations actually. Spoke to a range of stakeholders and looked at a range of stakeholder information sources. Councillor Campbell says. I think that's it, Chair. I mean, the point is, it doesn't have to be war and peace. That's the point.
That's the point. Yes. Okay.
It can be a civil policy, but I think that the overriding question here is: are we minded to care about this issue and do anything about it? Absolutely. And if we are, then it's the creation of a policy where we'll take action. That's what the panel was asking for, essentially.
Okay, that's super. Right, over to you, Councillor. Well, we know we agree with our recommendation to you. So,
what we need to put therefore to the strategy group here, in actual fact, do we agree with the fact that we do in actual fact take on board, as it were, the rural transport strategy, or do we in actual fact say that we're not going to commit resources to that because effectively we are a big player in this, and therefore it's not for me to say. In actual fact, it's for this strategy group to say.
Well, you need to put a recommendation for it, Councillor.
Well, the recommendation we have before is I would just say that we re-examine this rural strategy, rural strategy, and take in conjunction with the county council in actual fact. And I think that and taking account, of course, of some of the evidence base and improved evidence base in terms of what we need to provide for. And that's really, I think, as far as I understand, is where I would want to go. As far as two is concerned,
I think everyone accepted it.
Yes.
I think on one note, it's about, as Councillor Morgan says, it's not about writing war and peace. The strategy can be quite short and succinct.
Yeah.
About themes of what we're going to try and do.
We either want to do it or we don't want to do it.
Well, I think members do want to do it. But we have to be mindful of resources, because obviously we have a capacity issue, like all councils do. So you want to work effectively and get the right outcome. So I think we're getting there actually, that the actual strategy will not be a lengthy document. It will be about key themes that we want to try and influence improvements in our rural transport across the district. And we can do that from maybe two or three different routes.
So we want to re-examine and deliver improvements to our rural strategy. Is that correct on this particular
I said not further consideration. I think we should be preparing a sort of succinct rural transport strategy. Can you see what words we want to use, Councillor Morgan?
Chair, if you do actually want a way to make it a more coherent document, then you couldn't actually. I think there's two options here. I think no. I think we could put some improvement. I think the first option is that that a policy is prepared on this topic of rural transport, and it could be as simple as that.
Or do we taking? Do we actually want to delete one altogether and say that the council promotes actively and just have two, which is actually what we want to achieve, isn't it?
When we have a policy, we have to have control over what we're doing on that policy.
Yes.
So therefore, it is about influencing. That's different, isn't it? Because obviously we want to influence improvements in the rural transport across our district. But obviously, where we can contribute, we will do. That's how I see it.
But that's what the policy would contain. Surely a policy is a position on the topic.
Yes.
So exactly. So therefore, the policy again, not a Tolstoy event, could be a short piece to say, this is our situation, our position on this topic, and this is what we'll do in these circumstances. And it could be as simple as that. Could be a couple of pages, and we'll have this as a reference document when the need arose. So that's option number one, Chair. Potentially, which would be a better solution.
Thank you. And Councillor Osborne.
Can I suggest that you do defer it, Chairman, so that you, I think all the officers and the members have listened to the debate, so that we come up with some sensible recommendations that everybody's happy with for next scrutiny committee, next strategy committee, so that we can actually get what we want and not sort of think of something off the hoof that we're not going to get or we might get. That seems a much more sensible thing.
We delay the next council meeting is end of October, so no decision will be taken until December if we do that.
Well, the world, what I'm saying, Chairman, is the world is not going to end. It is better to have it right and correct and proper. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul.
Simon Bowles, sorry, Chair.
Well, we're trying to piece this together back here. One of the things we're conscious of is that when a task panel is given a task, it focuses on the task.
That's right.
Deliver on that. As a strategy group, what we're trying to do is integrate one element with another element. So, for example, if I look at rural transport, I can see missing dimension urban transport. Are you all content with urban transport? And as councils, we need to say something about transport per se. Then I think about the links with the economy, which is what's in the S&I report itself, and making the links with the economy. And all we were trying to do was to make that linkage. So we weren't trying to play with a recommendation if you didn't want to defer. And Simon here has got a recommendation, proposition suggestion, if you wish to have another one. Or the alternative is, yes, we look more carefully at how we integrate the transport desires of the committee. We quite clearly come through with, we think, the necessity of linking with what's the transport all about? It's about serving residents, yes, but it's also about the economy. You know, on the back of what you've just heard about Sunday, there are linkages with all of these areas. So when you talk about strategy, it's the holistic approach, which is where strategy group comes in, which is why it's not unreasonable for strategy group to have a different set of recommendations to S&I.
Yeah, but on the urban transport and the rural, it's about rural. That's what the task force is about, that's what the recommendations are about.
Well, I would say,
so it clarifies it totally.
Yeah, all I would say, Chair, is
complicated with the urban.
It's transport about integrated transport. Rural areas come into the urban areas, etc.
Can I just hear Simon's proposals for any amended resolution?
Chair, this is simply drafted in an attempt to capture what appeared
yes.
to be the mood of the meeting, I'll put it that way, which is, would place recommendation one with that a rural economic and transport strategy be prepared, taking into account the outputs of the S&I task panel on rural economic roles for a strategy when this is available.
That sounds very reasonable. How do you feel, Councillor Omer?
I'm happy with that.
Chair, it sounds very similar to what I drafted a few minutes ago. So that sounds
Are you happy with that?
Councillor Campbell, you happy with that?
I think so.
Do the long day.
Just wanted to say, Chairman, I hope you notice being made of some of the suggestions that have been made about how we might improve our evidence base.
Well, I think there's two things. One is improving the evidence base, and the second one is improving the lobbying and influencing as well, on behalf of all our residents. So on that basis, Councillor, that you have to propose that?
I am indeed prepared to accept that. And
second,
Chairman, I mean, I'd be very happy to hear the debate taking place here this evening, because actually I think we're actually trying to get down to it. While we have not had an exhilarating outcome yet, I think we are going to get to the point where this thing will be taking more we'll have a much more efficient, more effective rural transport.
Chair, I think that's the point of scrutiny.
It is the point of scrutiny.
Absolutely
Right.
To stir things up and shut.
And it's, see, one of my points was we have a lot of members who are not in strategy in this council, and therefore they're actually able to participate in scrutiny functions. That's why I was asking the question about only 2 members doing that, even though I've taken forward the point you made. Because actually it's important that scrutiny is here, it's important that backbench members of this council are here about the concerns they have in their wards and areas. So I think that's another thing we can talk about another time.
I'm not a member of scrutiny, I should just say that I haven't.
No, I know you are, I know you, you're part of the panel.
No, just thanks. So I thank the panel
No,
members.
I'll just Councillor Morgan.
And Chair, on that subject, actually, for sake of absolute clarity, the task panel leaders are more than welcome to co-opt any member, obviously it's not a conflict, to their panels.
Yes.
And we do have a diversity. This particular panel, we have a highly focused group, particular, as you've seen.
Yeah, I think there's lessons to be learned from this episode, which will be very helpful moving forward. I mean, all round, I'm not talking about all round. Mr. Councillor.
I thought we, portfolio holders, we can't be going.
Well, Abigail's not portfolio.
No, but I know you just said any
No,
member.
Chair, hence I said where there is no conflict of interest.
Yeah.
That's the point, yeah. Okay, without further ado, we have a recommendation which the portfolio holders happy with, which the student chair is happy with, and which the task panel member is happy with. Can we put that forward for the vote? Are you happy to do that?
Can we just thank the panel members and Abigail and
do, don't you?
and for leading on what we're going to do.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Councillor Over, second one. This is the commercial estate review outcomes.
Well, this is really quite topical because today the leader and myself have been to Westminster for a conference of discussion where we were talking about what they call PSP, that's the public sector PLC. This is where, in fact, consideration has been given to how we, as it were, look at the assets we have in this council, particularly our property assets. Some of them are, for example, in the high street, we have our industrial estates and all those kind of things. And in terms of modernisation, making certain we meet the challenges of the 21st century, the resource of this council will be stretched, I think, in actual fact, to achieve all those objectives. Although we've already been reasonably successful, of course, where we have, as you know, intervened recently, and we have 2 companies on board with us, and actually, fact, who are now enjoying modern premises, and we great for actual fact, I think, can benefit hopefully from the income stream. But you know, we do have limited resources, both human resources and financial resources, and therefore the PSP approach to this is actually fact is that we sort of join together with this public sector group and, as it were, just move forward on the basis that this is working together. This is not entering into contracts and things, but effectively working together to try to see if we can extract from the assets that we have, that we can build upon those, that we can gain revenue from it, we can build a strong capital base too, and that we can deliver improvements in actual fact that benefit the community, and in particular the business community, in terms of being big drivers, as it were, within the economy, which is a different approach that we perhaps have had for years. I have to say this, when this first was presented myself, I found it a bit of a shock to the system. I didn't realise it almost sounded, it's all too good to be true. How can this be win, win, win? But they did try to reassure us in actual fact that there are, in fact, 9 other councils who engaged with them in actual fact that this has been, and in some cases has been successful, in other cases is proving to be successful, and that there's been a degree of trust that has been almost unbelievable between what we might call the public sector and the private sector in the way they actually deal with, as it were, this, as it were, reinvestment and driving, as it were, their contribution to the local economy and the well-being of this council, indeed the people who live in and around it. So we did not hear, I believe, leader, I think if you asked, so we heard no voices against this. It was sounding like good news all the way around. But we're not easily fooled, you know, because, you know, we're dealing with the private sector, are tough and they're hard nosed. They have in actual fact produced a formula that seems to work, and I think that formula is written on the report here, that, you know, there would be an estate review, and although the DDC will still continue to run the estate, operate the estate, but there was an investment partnership that can be put together, and this is what they're suggesting, and this in actual fact increases the options for development and redevelopment, And I think that we do know in actual fact that we do have, yes, a considerable portfolio of property, but it is an ageing portfolio, and we need to bring it up, once again, to repeat my words, up to the 21st century standards. And I think it would be on the resource of this council in its present structure, perhaps to achieve that objective. And this, in actual fact, could be a vehicle, if you might use it, for achieving those objectives. You can see on the background our council estate is valued at 19 million, generates an income of 1.7 million, and direct cost of 0.3 million. I won't read these all out to you, but it gives you the profile here. But what we're talking about in actual fact is being able to establish even better returns than that. But once again, without risk, though there's nothing in this life without some degree of risk, but it does seem to be out any great risk, because this is where they actually perhaps sit round the table together and work out, as it were, the priorities. And from those, in actual fact, they are able to illustrate this in actual fact, that they can produce satisfactory outcomes in financial terms, and also in terms of us trying to seek to achieve some of our objectives that might otherwise elude us, because we do not have the human and financial resources to discharge them ourselves. So there you are. That gives the sort of flavour, very much the flavour of the day. There's a whole lot of stuff in here that you can see that we have read. In terms of what have we done in the past, you remember High Court, we Prospect Way, and of course Morris Road. There's an example where we took our estate and we redeveloped it, and we helped a company there to go forward. It's used its own capital resources to develop its business, but all at the same time, actually, it's a high-skill, high-value business, and also it has provided employment, and secured employment is very important. And of course, we have others. I better not mention the word for a moment, as we're involved in some discussion of those, but we have others who have approached us. But we actually perhaps now saying that we ought to look at this and take a far more holistic view. And I think there's some common ground here. They talk about outsourced management, joint venture agreements, all these kind of things. That's what I'm going to say there. I think the time is coming when we do need to take this on board. And I'm coming here today with a view to hoping that this council, or this strategy group, would be comfortable, as it were, to take forward, as it were, the first step, which is not to commit us, but to sort of dip our toe in the water and just let's see what this is all about. So there, I'm opening the floor to you, Chairman. People obviously want to chip in and offer opinions on these things. I've read the report, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Thank you indeed, Chris. Just want to say, I was very impressed there. So what was interesting was there's no risk at all of you agreeing to recommendations tonight, because it doesn't mean we're going to do anything other than engage in the process. The thing that's interesting is that you get capacity out of this which you might not necessarily have. We're obviously all staff, we're a small council, and we're trying to do a lot of things, and therefore using this particular process we get a lot of capacity out of it. We only do it if it stacks up. And you get a better return. The evidence of people who've already been involved in this process is you get a far better return than if you did it yourself. That's the point. That's the sort of thing that's coming out in the discussions today. But that, again, every case on its own merits. So it depends what we're looking at and depends what the situation is. The other thing also about the normal tendering process, of course, as people know, if you tender for services and then whoever wins the bid, often they win the bid because obviously they really sort of bear down to the bone on what they're actually offering. And then when the contract's in place, sometimes they find it difficult to maybe fulfil what they said they were going to do, because obviously things were tight and it's very, very tight margins. The point about this process is that gets away from all that, because what you do is you don't go for the tendering process where the winner wins. You talk to people and you find a solution, and that's the difference in terms of the private sector and the public sector. So I think this model's got some merit, and obviously I think what I would recommend tonight is we actually support the recommendation, because there's no risk in this council. Now I would suggest that when we get a bit more detail, we actually have a members session. Yes. Further member sessions, so members can actually understand how the process works and how it might be adopted to a certain way in this council. And certainly we could look at this council where we feel the fit might be worth considering, and then we can take it from there. So we're not committing anything tonight other than just looking at the model, and I think this has got some real legs actually moving forward, potentially, because obviously proof will always be in the pudding, but it's worth looking at. And if I didn't think it's worth looking at, I'll say so tonight, but I think it is worth looking at. Because we did actually have a good examination today down in London, and there are other partners who are already involved in this process, and it is an interesting one.
Well, we have Warwick nearby who we can speak to in terms of anyone wants to do the personal investigation, but what did come out in it actually that this is a think they also they did recommend in actual fact that that the presentation was made to the council as a whole, so they actually get a feeling and an understanding, because what they want in actual fact is not this to be something where it's a divide, political divide or anything like that. If you can buy into this and you can see the advantages and their mutual advantages, this is the way they would like to go forward. And I think that's absolutely essential. If they were to sense in actual fact that there was serious divisions in this kind of thing, then I think you would find that we would not be the sort of council they would want to be talking to. So at the end of the day, I think that I agree with the leader here, that this is certainly, let's dip our toe in, let's have a look and see what they've got to say about it. And yes, I think there's a need for this presentation made to all members of the council, so you get a full and proper understanding of how they work, how they function, which I think you'll find very, very interesting. And the leader has said we are assured by our colleagues, not least the one members from Warwick, that they found them extremely trustworthy, and they believe in actually that the risk is, you have to use the term minimal, but it's a minimal risk in this, but there can be much advantages gained out of it, not least the modernisation and our commercial businesses and our industrial estate, which I think is to do with trying to make certain that the prosperity of both Daventry and the district is actually is maintained.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Osborne.
Chairman, I don't want to talk about that part of it. I want to talk about the disposal side of it.
Okay, yeah.
On a bit there. I've got to stress before I say that, I don't mean anything personally. So, when I read it a couple of times, my first conclusion is, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Because it's their jobs. In other words, that was looked at by the council, not looked at somebody independent didn't look at it. That was my first thought. My second thought, and I've mentioned it before, that should this council be a large commercial estate landlord, or should any council in this sort of era, we're there to provide services. Okay, this funds services. But it's an awful lot of money, the value of it. Similar to what you did with the housing stock, or what the council, not you personally, what the council did with the housing stock, it does have a value. I'd have liked to have seen, let's say, a more in-depth look at what we have by somebody independent, and what the incomes are. I know it shows you a total income, but I don't know how many people. I know it shows figures 0.3 of a million of direct costs and things like that. I don't know the wages of people that are employed in this. And to have made up my mind more, and Simon, don't take it personally, I would have liked to have had somebody independent look at it and some more figures to make a better decision, a better informed decision than just what's there. I don't know whether anybody else has the same thoughts, but...
Well, Councillor Osborne, the point tonight is to look at the recommendations, what we're actually agreeing tonight. If we do agree, it is the conclusions of the review that DDT should continue to own and operate the estate subject to the creation of an investment partnership to increase options. The word options is very important because it's not that they're going to happen.
Yes, but it's the first sentence. That's what I'm talking against.
Yes.
I don't believe there's enough information for me as a member to consider whether we should still own that.
Well, that's the point that will come out. That's the whole point that will come out of the review.
We're not taking that decision at the present
time. We're not taking that decision. We're not saying that. So we're taking no decision other than we're looking at this option. And the point about the options is that down in London, it's clear that this is all about revenue generation. It's all about maximising your assets for revenue generation. And the reason for that is it means A, you can keep services going. B, instead of cutting services, a lot of people cut services. And once you cut a service, it's gone forever. So the point about income generation is you keep services going, it keeps the service going. The second point also is you should maximise, I don't think local government necessarily is the best at actually maximising what it owns in terms of assets to create revenue generation. That's not being unkind, I think it's just the way of the world. The commercial sector has more experience in that, but we're not actually agreeing to that anyway. We're not saying that's definitely going to happen. What we're saying that we should look at the option. Because I think we have a duty. I mean, Joe, there, the portfolio holder of resources, will understand the financial pressure is going to increase still further. Whoever the government in 2015 is, there's going to be a further squeeze on local government funding. And there's got to be a way, I think we at Daventry are very happy about the fact we want to deliver our services to our communities. and therefore we should look at all options to maximise, as we are doing already with invest and save schemes, our revenue income to actually make sure the services can continue.
Chairman, if I could come back, I haven't got a problem with what you're saying.
No, I know.
The problem I've got is that the first sentence actually says we will continue to own, and then go through all the other options. And I've got a problem.
Okay.
If this council decides that it should
Okay.
continue to own,
So you're
I've got
saying-
a problem. There's not enough, in my opinion, there's not enough information, financial information, and it should be, I would have thought, independent and not by ourselves, because we're judging ourselves. To be out, but the second part of it, I'm absolutely with you. If the decision is to continue to own, and I'm saying I want to.
So just go to that, Simon, that first point. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there's a couple of points I would make. The first thing I can reassure you, it was not the people who run the estate who prepared this report. Okay?
No.
I accept that it
Council,
counts, but the people whose jobs would be affected, shall we put it that way, would not be they provided information for it, but they did not carry out a review or prepare a report. For fairly obvious reasons, I don't understand what I might have as an example. So, yes, we didn't go and pay a bunch of consultants to do the work for us, although frankly, consultants typically, you ask them to find, they take your watch and tell you what it says. We did do it ourselves, but it was done by people other than those who would be affected by any decision. The second point, if you turn to page 18 of the report, sorry, page 17, the estate has an assessed market value of 19 million. Now, if you sold it, and if you got 19 million, which actually if you sold it more often you wouldn't, because you would have a volume discount applying, you would have to, if you put the money in the bank, you would have to have interest rates at 7%, which is highly unlikely any time in the future, and produce the same amount of cash net that council is currently benefiting from. And even if you achieve that, you would be suffering long-term deterioration of the value of that cash. You're spending the interest, the capital value is declining over time as it's eaten away by inflation. So there was a huge financial driver for this council to keep it there. In fact, if we didn't keep it, or in that position, we would have a very serious hold on the council's finances. And that's a fundamental driver behind the recommendation to keep this estate in-house.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, Councillor Owen, my apologies.
Yeah, sorry. I did get asked a question by a member of the public the other day, like you said, looking at all options, and it was just, why isn't the council using public money to build social housing? That was just a question I got asked, looking at all options.
Well, is it relevant to this paper? That's the question.
I know, sorry.
Okay, thanks, man. Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just simply wanted to echo what Councillor Osborne was saying, that that was a bit of an evidence back for you, which we have been talking about in earlier papers. And I would like to know a bit more before, and I appreciate what you're saying, that the recommendation is about going to that next stage, but that's exactly what we've just had a very long discussion about previously. And I also noted the use of the word tax transparent, and just mindful of the fact that we've just passed our fair tax motion, which had a long conversation about tax dodging. Just wanted to make sure about the definition of tax transparency.
What is the definition of tax transparency?
Tax transparency of an LLP is provided for in the Act of Parliament, which provides a legal framework for LLPs. All it means is that each partner of the LLP receives the income untaxed and is then subject to tax under its own arrangements. So for DDC, which is important for our DDC is constitutionally not subject to corporation tax, and therefore we would receive our share in full. That's the conclusion.
Thank you. Councillor Guildford?
Sorry, Chairman. I hear what Councillor Osborne's saying, and I do agree with the comments he's making, and that maybe we should have got a more independent report.
What points in particular, Councillor Guildford? I wasn't sure which point.
It's on the financial details, and that brings me as well. I'm resources portfolio holder, but I've had no input or seen no figures detailing behind this report, so perhaps I should have been involved, my opinion, a little bit more, but I understand it's not my portfolio holder, but as earlier there's reports that do profit, very profit. So I'm just saying that I can hear what Councillor Osborne is saying, and that perhaps, yes, we should have that.
So what are you saying? I'm trying to understand what are you saying.
Well, one, I would have preferred to
Get involved
by
there.
law,
Yes.
when I haven't even been approached on the report. So, and I'm the resources portfolio holder. So if you're asking me to explain any answers, I can't.
Yeah.
And two, I would have preferred to see a more independent report.
Okay, come back to that. Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you, Chairman. My comment is really very simple. Because I'm a simple country lad, I don't necessarily understand all these figures. I simply wanted to commend your suggestion that we have a member development session on the outcome.
That's what's required. Yeah.
But I was slightly concerned, amazed almost, that this seems to have benefit with no risk, and that seems alien to me. And I'm sure that a member development session could explain that to me.
Well, I think at the moment, I said, there's no risk at the moment, because we just agreed those recommendations, there's no risk.
Right.
The risk will occur, of course, if you take up, if you actually go forward on a scheme, there'll be risk involved, obviously, so that will be managed risk. So there's a slight difference. I'm just saying the recommendations before you declare this.
Okay.
I'll just go back to another one. Councillor Paul wants to come in.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not unnoticed that our commercial portfolio is tired. And being tired, it needs obviously regeneration. We at the planning committee passed the plans for the Knoll for high-tech industry. We are in a growth area. This is a window of opportunity with, it is suggested, no risk. We have a track record in Daventry for inward investment. Henry Blue, High Force, the portfolio holders, has already named them, not forgetting the worth of the Icon and the incubator units within. My only question would be, the risk doesn't involve until we get on board. That is fine. Is there a contract time with this arrangement? And quite honestly, if it is as it reads, and I've read this report a lot more than I read the previous one, I think there's a window of opportunity here for us to succeed.
Thank you, Colin. I think it's a window of opportunity to look at this, and I think also our commercial rents are very important to this council. Yeah. The amount of revenue it creates for this council is substantial. So, and if we can actually improve that, then why wouldn't you do that? And the point I'm saying is, I think Ian wants to come in a second. But from my point of view, it seems silly for us not to agree the recommendations tonight. Bear in mind, we have council in 3 weeks, is it? Or when's council? Just about there. Well, of course we've got no strategy. So we have no strategy group after this one before council in December. So in a sense, we can have our member workshop to go through it in more detail. And if we don't like it by December council, we just reject the recommendation and go to the council. That just seems to me a sensible way forward. Ian, do you want to say anything? So?
Well, I just want to say I think nothing comes without risk, so I don't get the idea that there's no risk involved.
If we go forward with it, yes.
If we go forward with it, we will need to go into it with our eyes wide open.
Yeah.
I do think it seems to give us an opportunity for another string to our bow. What I wouldn't want members to run away with this evening, though, is the idea that this is the only thing that we could ever do to make any real revenue returns for the council. Because I'm going to probably stick my neck right over here. I'm going to disagree with the chair because I don't believe necessarily that engaging with the public sector and the private sector, which is there fundamentally to make a profit, that we can expect to receive the same rate of return by engaging with the private sector than by doing it ourselves. All I would say is that every scheme that we look at will need to be assessed very carefully against our own business planning.
That's right, yeah.
Before we running into another scenario with someone else's business planning model that doesn't necessarily take on board our access to cheap funds, etc., etc., etc. So I think we just need to be careful that we're not rushing away with the idea that this is a solution that's going to meet all our needs forever, because I'm sure it won't. And I think the first time we actually engage with them, we will then know what the real risks are, and we'll then understand more, in a more comprehensive way, how we engage with them in the future. And I think we need to be really very careful here. And the other point I was going to make is, I'm not sure that we can expand these numbers and bring them back down to this, but the basic revenue facts speak for themselves here. This council nets £1.4 million. That's after we've taken our staffing costs out of it, which are incredibly low by comparison to commercial renting agents. I know that personally. I've got personal experience of that myself. So you have a figure for the staff element and the component that we put into it, and you have a net figure of 1.4 million. It's going to be very difficult for this council, by disposing of a stock the size that it is, to achieve that net return in terms of investment, return on investment. And I think the reason that the numbers perhaps have been condensed into the simplistic form is because we are not talking about a minor component of our revenue account here. We are talking about a major component of our revenue account. So anything we do needs to be very, very well considered, with all of the problems that the current financial markets have. And I think the safety in this report is that the advice says, for the time being, do nothing with your stock, but look at the potential to bring more money in. But I don't think we should ignore the fact that the basic figures are too big to ignore in terms of just throwing it away because we might want to sell it to someone else. Now, I can go and spend a lot of money outside, and I can go and get a consultant to tell me whether this £19 million figure is correct, or whether actually it's optimistic, which I think Simon has inferred it is, probably, because you sell so much in the market at one time. Individually, we might get 19 million, but collectively, something tells me we wouldn't get that much. There would be a discount. And therefore the numbers are actually getting worse, not better. So I can do that if that's what the council wants me to do. I can go and get any number of pieces of advice from outside. But at some point, who's going to brief the consultants? Because if we brief the consultant, we'll get back what we asked them.
Can I come back with just one point?
No, I'll come back as well.
Thank you. I'm missing the point now. I suppose it's the thought of getting a few lines with 1 point something million in, 1 point something million, 0.3 of a million, should do this, and then a recommendation for a report that isn't written by the person, that isn't written by Simon Bear. Somebody else did it. Who did it? That's my question. Who did it? Whose report is it? It's not headed by...
I'll get that question answered.
So perhaps you can give me who did that financial analysis?
If I may turn you to Daventry for the contact office, Rob Saunders, who is a Emirates qualified surveyor and one of our project managers. But he doesn't work, say, in the property management team, but he has access to all the data. But he has prepared it, I have worked over it, SMT has worked over it, the Chief Finance Officer has been all over it, and this is a consolidated report reflecting the views of the management team.
Okay, thank you. And also Rob Saunders was down with us today in Westminster. He came down and saw that trip. So, Councillor Morgan.
Chair, thank you. If I've understood this correctly, thank you for letting me speak, by the way. It says the investment partnership. Is this the investment partnership as described on page 20, the example there, Public Sector PLC? If that is correct, and that's the sort of option we could consider, what do they mean by proprietary business model? What is their proprietary business? How does it function in reality, and how? I mean, I think that's where a lot of the risk might have got to.
Well, I think Councillor Moore, I think the thing is that you said we had a session on this. I think that's very important. All these points can come out rather than tonight. One of the things that was said in the second recommendation tonight is whether we should actually give approval to the establishment of a ability partnership in this case, I'm not so sure. Then that can follow for the council meeting and take that to council. Following the workshop, the members have a far better idea of what's been involved in this process. All I'm trying to say is on what we saw today in London, and to be fair to Ian, he's made a point there, but I'm not actually saying we actually go ahead. I'm just saying we should go ahead and look at it. And it's about, when we actually had the presentation as chairman, I was sitting next to him, I had quite some concerns when I heard what was going forward. Today is a bit more detail behind it today when we were down in Westminster. We also had other councils there who already are involved in this process. And obviously, I'm not, when it sounds too good to be true, sometimes it is. And what I'm trying to say is we're not myself and Chris are foolish enough to actually say, we go for that definitely, but what we should do is not discount it. That's the point we're making. And whether it's the whole stock or part of the stock or whatever we look at, so it could be a number of things we could look at.
Yeah.
I think that would come down to a time. See, if you join the partnership, if we were to join the partnership, we'd have to do anything other than join the partnership. So if you join the partnership, all you do is you'll be in the partnership, and if an opportunity came along, there might be an opportunity where you might be able to work with the private sector on a particular item or whatever. And that's all it is. If that doesn't come along, we don't want to do it, you don't do it. That's the point of saying. That's where there's no risk unless you actually engage and then do it, then obviously it's a risk.
Gives you access to it.
Yes, that's about that. So that's where I'm going from. So I'm sorry if I was worrying you that I was actually saying we should proceed. I think the second recommendation actually is sort of suggesting that in a way, and I'm not sure we should do that until we get to
I think that could be subject to a presentation on this.
I think we need to have a workshop, and we have the
time and opportunity
to
do that, and then bring it back to strategy before council.
Before council, then make a recommendation.
Is that just the second recommendation?
Well, we could bring the whole paper back actually, strategy next time. Maybe I'm not sure we can get a workshop in. We have to look at the diaries and what have you.
I mean, Leader, whether there's anything I can do tonight to clarify for members, because in principle, all that's being suggested is that we create a limited liability partnership.
No.
It places no obligation on the council to use their LLP. And in practice, if you look at the diagram on page 21, wherever DDC can use its own money, which is the point Ian was making, and the risk is not too great, it's almost certain that that's a better choice. It's only when you're dealing with a situation where the risk is too high to risk public money,
that's right,
or you need so much money that we haven't got the capacity to deliver it.
So they can provide the money.
Exactly so.
They can provide the money.
That you look at using this model, and even then you test it against other alternatives. It just provides you with, as they describe it, the table. If I could perhaps also respond to Councillor Colin Morgan's question about the proprietary business model.
Yes.
Essentially, it's a staged commitment model, simply stated regarding it. The only piece of work is done at their risk. If that's promising, then there's a degree of commitment from the council, and eventually get to the point where, rather like the do, you sign a full development agreement, and at each stage, that's a decision for the council whether it proceeds or not, and obviously the risks to that particular project identified at that time.
Can I just add to that? This is not stepping into a wholesale disposal of our assets in terms of, which is a point made by Simon in actual fact. This is that. Let's look at selectively as how we might advantageously, mutually exploit our assets. But I think that the way this is best explained, really, if you have a workshop or a presentation, if people are able to ask questions about this, then you may get a greater amount of reassurance before. Because, can I say this, myself, and I'm certain the leader was too, that it was a bit, I've seen the seasonless catalogue, they also have beautiful flowers on the front, but when I've ever planted things out, they usually come out half the size they are, they're never quite as bright and shiny. And, so there's all that touch of the seasonless catalogue, right? This is too good to be true, I can't really believe it. But we were speaking, listening to other councils who had been involved in this, and they were right the way across the country, and including Warwick, and who were just down the road from us, and they said they were very pleased with the way things were going, that they saw tremendous benefit come to this in terms of liberating from their assets resources they could redeploy within their community and after that, and that they had been, because it was sitting around the table and only agreeing to do things on that basis. You weren't signing up to sign them away, what have you, then this in actual fact seemed to work very well. In other words, that you could be persuaded, or we could persuade each other in actual fact there was some merit in going down this particular road, and I think in actual fact that perhaps you are a bit nervous about this, but we're just moving forward one stage at the moment, and if you get a presentation you may be reassured.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilbert.
Just to say, I'm not against continuing and operating the estate within the council. It was just the principle of it being a more independent conclusion from an independent source, and that again to just highlight that appropriate, I think, to myself to
In the preparation of the paper?
In the preparation of the paper, because, you know, I'm an independent set of eyes as well, so maybe I would have been happy with that.
Certainly we can make certain that takes place when the next paper is produced.
Councillor Hills.
Yeah. When I first heard this, I don't express to be an expert, but I felt, quite frankly, it was an interesting concept. And I don't think there's anything wrong in looking at it. Because after all, what it is, as far as I see it at the moment, it's an option. Nothing has been agreed. So personally, I don't see anything wrong in accepting the recommendations. What I would say, if we look at it further, I think it's vital that the strategy group with councillors get as much information as possible, because it's something I would not like to see a proposal suddenly come forward without having a bit more background on that than we've currently got. And I listened to what Councillor Guildford said, and I sincerely feel that as part of her portfolio, because they do cross over, I would like to see, personally, a bit more involvement with Councillor Guildford. I think that's the right way. It then gives us an option of two councillors more involved, and hopefully then we can get more information on it. But I don't see at this stage, this is my own personal opinion, that there is any problem in accepting the recommendation, but it's the way that it's monitored and the way we conduct it in the future, and we certainly need more meat on the bone before we move forward.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Colin, that's Paul.
Yeah, we are being tied up with financial matters. The financial matters are tied up in 4.1 on the bottom of page 17. The crux of the matter is that we're going to bring this back to member development. It's then going to go to scrutiny, and it's then going to go to full council. I personally think the figures in the paragraph below 4.1 are, you know, self-explanatory. I know the officer, I know his competence, and there is a market value for our estate, whether it be, you know, individual units, a terrace unit, or one unit as a whole. There is a market value there, and it's not rocket science to work out the market values. I have no problem with the financial paragraph.
Thanks, Councillor Paul. Thank you, Steve, for that. I mean, when we had a presentation on this scheme in this chamber a month ago or so, whatever, and I was, you know, I heard it all, but you hear these things before. And then today actually was quite an eye-opener, because I heard it from other people who have been involved in this process. And in some ways, this process is different to anything else. And I think one of the things for me that came out was revenue is going to be very important for everybody in local government. And the council's finances generally are going to get very, very tough indeed. I know members in this council, one of the key things we want to do, we talked about earlier, rural transport. You know, it'd be great if we can spend loads of money on rural transport. What members want to do is deliver good services to the public we represent. The reality is we have to look at new ways of doing things, and this is just a potential new way of doing something. And if it doesn't stack up, we don't do it. If it does stack up on certain things, we do it. If we believe, with all the due diligence that Ian's talking about, it stacks up, then we might proceed down the route of doing it, and then we can measure it and see how it does. But I don't think you should discount it at this stage. That's the real point today. And I think by taking this recommendation forward, it's going to go to council in December. Actually, we have all that time before then to have that member workshop to really, you know, look at it in far more detail. And even then, we won't be deciding what we're going to do. It'll be just a matter of understanding the principles of what's been discussed and what potential benefits may be. And then, if you take it forward as a recommendation, as a resolved item in December, then obviously that's the two things we're talking about then. And even if you join, it doesn't mean you have to do anything. So it is actually, that's what I'm saying about low risk at the moment. It becomes riskier, of course, if you actually get involved in a scheme or a scheme with this company. So my recommendation, like Chris was saying, just read this tonight, and then before council, when we actually resolve that item, we actually resolve it as a definite decision, we'll have that interim with
a member presentation.
You happy with that?
Chair, yeah, I would say definitely, but I think it does require, I mean, particularly, by the way, it's not coming through scrutiny, as been discussed at all, but more understanding of, going back to the business model, obviously Sambas gave us some description about this, but I'm thinking really about their revenue model, how they're going to make money from this. They are.
That's what you asked. Well, we can sort of that.
That's what we in the session agreed, and particularly if we're going to tie our colours to a mast, really understanding the credentials of this organisation is absolutely critical.
Well, I could get the chief executive up maybe to do that and ask them, and if he could come up, he's the ideal person to answer those questions.
For sure, Chair, because I'm always concerned about this description of proprietary business models. I often use it myself when I'm discussing some in my own operations, when I don't want to completely tell the client what it is.
Okay, Tom, thank you actually for those contributions. Actually, it's been a very helpful discussion. I will actually ask the chief executive of PSP to come up and be here to answer the questions that members want to ask. That will give you either reassurance or not about the model they're proposing. And we'll arrange that before council, so obviously these recommendations, if we're not happy, will also get rejected at the council. If that's okay? You have to agree that?
So we take this advice forward.
Well,
a presentation will be made for the benefit of them.
Well, you can put the recommendation.
Well, I think it ought to be. That's been asked, and I think we're ready to say, so that's
well, we proposed it.
You're not going to, Chairman, you're not going to put this recommendation forward, then alter it if you want to before council.
Well, the point I'm saying is we put the recommendation forward now, and then if we don't like the presentation, then you can reject it at council. Yeah. Having actually gone for got further information, just reject it at council.
Well, I shall vote against it tonight, Chairman, then in that case.
Okay. Councillor Gilbert?
In the way it's written.
I don't understand that, but I respect your position.
I'm not against anything yourself or Simon Bears has said. The only thing I'm against is the very first part of it that contains the word should continue to own and operate the estate.
Well, you've heard the chief executive's view on that.
Yes, I've heard that, but I want to see it. I want to see a better report on paper, and I want to know who it's come from as well. That's my point.
Councillor Gilbert.
I then, in agreement with Councillor Oswald, I would have liked to have seen myself, and I feel because I have been involved in it, it's just that wording, the assumption being made.
Okay, how do other people feel? Councillor Griffin.
Well, I found this report very interesting, and I can see how the various options have been discussed. I think it is time we had a review of the commercial estate. I think it is very important. I think we need an overview, that we need to consider it all perhaps as an entity. So I'm in favour of a working group. I reserve my judgment on what the outcome will be, of course, but look forward to having more detail.
I think you make a very strong point there about the review of the actual estate. Yeah, Councillor Luke.
Chairman, do you understand that you put in the two recommendations forward, because I thought you were going to take out the second one, because why are you approving establishing a limited partnership? You don't need to do that now.
Well, Simon Bowers, sorry, I keep calling you Councillor, that's right. Simon Bowers has already confirmed the reasons that it's not a big deal one way or the other. We do it, it's in place. And we don't use it.
I think it's better if we leave it out. And Chair, is the members group just the strategy members?
No, it's all members.
Okay.
All members of council.
We need to know.
All members of council should be informed about this. Yeah. No, I prefer that to having full council, because obviously, if all members have the opportunity to attend a session where they can also ask the company involved, PSP involved, all the questions they want to ask, they can then establish whether they feel it's worthwhile considering or not. And then it goes to council, we can take a decision at council.
So the other members, it will just be strategy group members?
No. All members, as I said, all members of council. All members of council will be invited. So everybody can attend, and obviously, and I think what I would say to you is don't go with any prejudged views. Just come along, and you've read the report here anyway, you can see what the report says, and then you take a view when you ask your questions, see what the answers are, and see how you feel.
Yeah.
I think that'd be very helpful for everybody, actually. I think it's important to have information. I mean, tonight, I can't see any problem why you wouldn't accept these recommendations tonight, because if we're not happy taking it forward, we just reject it at council.
But Chairman, then you're going to have an awful argument at council.
No,
if I argue on my part, you are. But if you come to the next group, strategy group with those detailed financial figures, I support the rest of it. I just want to see it properly done on paper. the financial part of it. Now, I don't want to argue the council, but I will do it if I have to, because I feel strongly about it. But wouldn't it be absolutely better to just leave these recommendations, defer them, put them on the next strategy group, include the figures, and then we can all
What figures can't include, Steve? Sorry. Just trying to understand what figures you might
the
include.
disposal figures.
But we're not talking.
We're not talking about.
No, you are talking about it, because you're talking about retention of it. And if you're talking about retention of it, you're ignoring disposal.
Well, we're not talking about disposing of anything.
No, but you're talking about retention of it. So you're not giving it. It's supposed to be a review, isn't it? It's a review of this particular part of the council.
But I think we're getting very confused here, because obviously.
No, we're not getting confused, Chairman. It's a review of this part of the council. One of them is, because it goes through several paragraphs, should we sell them off? No, we shouldn't sell them off because it's not viable. I'm saying that I want more information to show me that it's not viable before I vote on whether we should even consider keeping them.
Well,
if we do keep them, Chairman,
okay.
I agree.
My question to you then, Steve, if you look at paragraph 4.1,
yeah,
where it says the core commercial estate is valued at around £90 million,
yeah,
and generates income of around £1.7 million annually.
Yeah.
I think it's 1.4 net, I think, which is said after staff costs. So my question to you, Steve, is if you don't agree with that, how are you going to actually replace that 1.4 net income?
If I don't agree to
if you actually say, all we're saying is that what we're saying is we keep the commercial estate because it provides £1.4 million of income to this council net, which means obviously that's beneficial to the council and the taxpayers in this district.
Yeah.
So I can't understand why you can't agree to that.
Because, to my mind, it's off the back of a fag packet costings. It doesn't show it. It doesn't show it properly, Chairman.
Simon, can you? Well, sorry about this.
Well,
these are headlines. I appreciate that, Steve. These are headline figures.
Well, you know me.
So obviously, you heard Colin Paul saying he trusts the officers. Jo Guilford's just a bit not happy because she wasn't involved in the process a bit earlier, which I will make sure that doesn't happen again, Jo. What I'm trying to say is I don't understand the argument, because obviously, if you don't believe the figures.
No, it isn't that. I want to see them in more detail.
Sorry, can you help?
Well, I can perhaps help to some degree, Chairman. The valuation figures come from the council's annual accounts. The valuation statement clearly each year, which goes into forming the accounts. So that's where the 19 million comes from. The income and expenditure figures come from this year's budget book. There's no magic about it. They've not been generated from some dark corner. They're all standard figures produced for the purpose of the accounts.
So back to you. How many units have we got? How many are within 10 years old? How many within 20? What sort of rent are they producing?
Doesn't matter, Steve.
Stephen, this is. Sorry.
Are you talking
about? Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, Stephen, this is an opportunity to review an estate and make some decisions in the future. This is the first step towards this, not the ultimate step. In terms of how we look at our estates, commercial, we've got high street and industrial and commercial estates. How we make the best use of these estates in the future, particularly modernisation, whether we go down this particular route in actual fact, because we want to maintain an income stream, which has been a tremendous benefit to this. The belief is actually that income stream we can considerably better, but also without taking any undue risk. And they've illustrated there have been other vehicles in the past that have been like this. The great advantage of this one is that this council sits around the table with these people in actual fact, and is considering modernisation and taking advice from them and its own thoughts about modernisation, some of its industrial and commercial assets in actual fact, exploiting them in a different way, and then this can effectively worked out in a round table way of doing it, which is a bit different in actual fact to the hard-nosed commercial way of doing it would be the way that Colin Morgan might do it, for example. But at the end of the day, I see no great harm in taking the first step towards that, and I'm just a bit surprised. We're not talking about selling off the estate.
Thank you, Bruce. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. It's my observation that Councillor Osborne and Councillor Guilford particularly feel provoked maybe about this, is that a review seems to have taken place. The whole subject of this report is a review, and they haven't had part in it, especially the key portfolio holder. And I think that's you know, that could have been avoided. And I think I would echo what Councillor Osborne says about deferring it, bringing it back, so that the review, we're not coming at it after the review. I think that's what it feels like as members. Well, certainly some members.
Simon, just to confirm, the commercial estate review took place where and by who?
Chairman, I think the point was taken to page 18 of the report. Council agreed to review to take place and meet the objectives for the review on the 19th of July 2012. As we said at the time, the review was to be carried out essentially by internal consultancy, so we used one of our project managers. It took longer than I wished, principally because that project manager was delivering the territorial, which took longer than was planned. And we brought it back to members in line with the decision of council as soon as we could. So, as I said, it was undertaken by Rob Saunders, project manager, obviously overseen by myself, and this final distillation of the results has gone through the internal testing process and with the involvement, for example, of the chief financial officer.
Right, so the 151 officer is happy. It's gone through that process. So if you're saying you don't support the 151 officer's view, because that's what's been said here, it went through strategy group, which it says on the 5th of July, 19th of July, so we agreed to go down this route. The 151 officers satisfied with the outcome of those figures. The point I still make is actually, I don't see how that's relevant still to what we're trying to just take forward at this stage. And whilst I appreciate that Councillor Guildford should have been involved, and as a matter I'll take up separately to this meeting, I don't understand why we can't just take this forward, and there's no threat to anybody because the council will take the final decision, and that will be after we've actually cross-examined, hopefully in this chamber, the PSP. We have further detail about the model we're looking at, so all members are fully in favour of it, and it is a different model to the one you normally see in local government, and therefore there might be some concerns, may not be some concerns, depending on what you hear and what you feel. But that's all I'm saying. So I don't see any reason why we can't move this forward. But I'll take it to the vote rather than continue, I think, because I think we've got a position here where some members feel that we shouldn't take these recommendations forward, we maybe should delay it, defer it to the next meeting. Yeah. Others say we should take it forward, and then we can still take the decision won't be taken to December anyway, whatever the outcome is. But also the third recommendation will be that we actually have a member development session involving PSP, so members can fully involve, can fully understand the model we're talking about, and then that will go to council in December.
Can I just
yes, of course you can.
That any further details of how these amounts have been arrived at will presumably be available to the working group.
So
it's helpful, you know, we can circulate it out to all members.
Oh, very helpful. You can do all members now.
I did find it rather strange why we're challenging these figures.
I don't understand.
I just don't understand at all. Yeah, because
they are conservative.
Okay, well, Chris, let's stop that there.
I simply wanted to make an observation about the wording of the recommendation, which seems to be bothering my colleague here. I interpreted that meaning, despite the fact that it looks as though we could get £19 million by selling it, let's not sell it now.
Exactly.
That's what I thought it meant.
Because we get 1.4 million of revenue.
Yeah, and we need to explore, we need to create a mechanism to allow us to explore other options.
And we can increase the value added to that, incidentally, we believe, by engaging in this process.
That depends on the result of the further investigation.
And of course, once you sell your 90 million of assets and you get your interest on it, the money, and then obviously the assets gone.
Absolutely.
That's the point. Anyway, we can't have the financial arguments, so it's really about the recommendations before you. Can we agree these recommendations? Show of hands. Okay, against. That's gone forward. Okay, and then that will be the third recommendation being we have this session involving PSP.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you for that debate, very good. I'm sure we'll get even bigger one when we have PSP now. That's good, it's good, because I think members have to challenge, and it's important.
One of the most important that we will be
very, very important to be looking at. Right. Of course, Councillor. Right, scrutiny improvement task panel report, this time on public engagement, which comes under access and communication issues. Councillor Howard's not here this evening. So, as the chair of the meeting, I'm going to propose that I'll put the 4 recommendations forward. I was going to ask Councillor Morgan, you want to comment on this report from Scrutiny Improvement?
Thank you, Chair. I think Chair, it's probably fortunate actually it's 10 to 9, and I think we've already had a good heat debate tonight. I think actually, whilst I may have some comments, I perhaps want to reserve any comments until other members have considered it, particularly task panel members and Chair Campbell and Randall, perhaps.
Okay.
Maybe you are happy, but I don't know, but perhaps let them speak in the first instance.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I'll ask Councillor Campbell, do you want to speak first? Or?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not happy with it in quick observation. I often feel like I'm going against the grain with the council a little bit in terms of public engagement. I'm the one that always looks at the response rates, consultations, and proposals, webcasting, meetings, and things like that. And I'm not deliberately negative. I'm not being negative because I'm in opposition. I just think public engagement needs to be at the heart of the business of this council, and I don't think it is. And I think this task panel report was an attempt to put it at the heart of the council, and I think the response is an attempt to sort of bat this away. And I think this report presents as many obstacles as possible to making some quite simple but important changes. And I think the only real actual change it endorses is opening the back door, which in symbolic value maybe is great, but it doesn't really do much for many people, not as much as all the other recommendations would if they were all taken together. So I do feel very disappointed, and I could go through, and maybe we will, in the course of the debate if we've got the strength for it, the individual recommendations, but I'm just generally disappointed. I think it's a bit of a very limp response.
What's the biggest disappointment?
I think one of my biggest disappointments is the reluctance to take on board the fact that many councils now take participatory budgeting as a matter of course, and providing the opportunity for local people to consult on the budget, how we spend their money. I just think it's done across the country, and I think it's something that we could have considered. The budget is like our policy without the rhetoric, and I think even not to even consider how that could be done, not even to have one of those sort of delaying fudging kind of recommendations that we look into it. I think that's a disappointment. That's one of my most significant disappointments. I think that's it. I realise I just sound very unhappy, but maybe I could be more productive in the debate later on.
Thank you. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. If you go look at our values, it's to place the customer at the heart of everything we do. Communicate openly and honestly, strive for continuous improvement and excellence in all that we do. Right. And when we were looking at this was what we were looking at. And obviously, that committee is scrutiny and improvement. So all the time we are looking at ways to improve, the council. And I felt that everything that we did, that we did look closely at everything, and they were improvements. On the recommendation, but it says even on recommendation 2, on page 28 of 4.1.8, it says currently the rear door is held open until the time the meeting starts, and then it is closed. I wonder if it was open this evening when everybody came in for their meeting, because I came in and it was 6:14 and it was closed. I just used my swipe card, which I often do, apart from planning. When it is a planning meeting, it is open. But other meetings, it's rarely I ever come in and the door is open. So, that doesn't work. And even then it says, subject to funding being available or approved. But it just needs a billboard out there just to say meeting this way. Because people who don't know this council will just come to that main access. So there was lots of things in there really. We've looked at, increasing the people's panel. And, some councils, they engage about 25 or 30% of people. And obviously the more people you engage, the more ideas that you have of what the people would like to see, like, as Councillor Campbell said. Looking at the budget, spending the budget, giving them options. So I was very, very disappointed. I just felt it come out the recommendations are very weak.
Councillor Randall, can I just, on part of your speech there, isn't recommendation 2 that science and access to public service to council members should be improved? That's part of the recommendation.
Yeah, subject to funding being available.
Well, of course, it's all going to be subject to funding.
It's a board. Even a chalkboard.
Well, I'm not going to go into the cost of what...
It's something, no, that is very, very cheap. You could almost get a chalkboard and say, strategy meeting, 6:15 this way. So that is just the most simplest thing. You know,
The
that's
council landlord was saying the recommendations in there, so you were saying it wasn't in there a minute
it
ago.
doesn't say it will be improved. It just says subject.
Well,
to
subject,
funding.
well, I think,
Well, you could say if you don't want to spend time, but we won't do it.
I think the residents' taxpayers' money should be looked at very carefully.
That's
It
right.
doesn't
That's
say it's
what
not
we
going to
need
happen.
That's
It
what
says
we need to
subject to.
consult.
Yeah. The other point I also said, maybe Council Osborne can answer this because he's chairman of planning, and planning always have lots of people come to their meetings. About the back door there, Steve, when the back door that Councilman was talking about, is it closed during planning meetings when the public can turn up?
It's usually the caretaker doesn't let people until 6 o'clock.
I know, but I'm talking about, yeah, but it's open.
It remains open because people come and go.
Yeah, open all night.
Yes, I mean people have to press the bell, but they can't just walk in.
No,
have to
they press the bell, but they get let in.
Yeah, they can indeed.
I think it's a sign up saying this, the press the bell. I think that one's covered already there, Wendy.
Yeah, we're very welcoming, aren't we?
Yeah, I think.
Well, yeah, the point I'm saying is, well, the second recommendation highlights the point you're moaning about. The point about access, the public never, I mean, have complaints about access to the building during meetings? No? Okay.
We do have a sign.
We have a sign, we said that, we
It
have a
always
sign.
says meeting this way.
Yeah, and I'm saying, we haven't had any complaints about members of the public complaining about the fact they can't access a meeting. There have been no complaints. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is interesting because we have had the odd complaint, and it has been an odd complaint. I do have to agree that perhaps if we can afford it, a little bit better signage, and sometimes when the caretakers are doing walkabouts and members of the public are stood there in the rain waiting for the bell to be answered, it's not a high priority. We don't have that many complaints, but if it's some way of making life a little bit easier for the general public or a silly councillor like me who leaves his badge at home, so be it.
Right, I mean, all I'm trying to say is, I think, in a sense, these recommendations we support. I mean, we have to follow that recommendations. I just don't think sometimes things get said which aren't necessarily reflecting the true position. And there's other times, I think, when we actually say we are going to look at signage and access, which is what it says here, then we have to do that. And no one's saying it won't happen. I just think it's important to get balance into this. And I do take aboard your campaign about trying to improve communication with Councillor Campbell, and I fully support that. And I think that often people don't want to necessarily communicate with councillors as much as you might think, but they always do when it's an issue. And planning is one of those ones where you get a lot of communication around the council. Housing also, individual housing, issues and what have you. And I think members generally, all ward members, often get a lot of connections from residents when issues arise. I think in terms of I think these meetings are now recorded, and I just feel that we shouldn't go over the top in terms of saying we're bad at everything, because we're not bad at everything. We're very good at everything, actually, in lots of ways. So I think it's just trying to get the balance right. Colin, Councillor Morgan.
Chair, thank you. I welcome the four recommendations clearly, and they are positive to move those forward, absolutely. I'm realistic when, as a chair of scrutiny, that we have to be focused in what we're asking for. And that's why I think they're nine very clear recommendations. And we're not going to be stupid enough to ask for a man to be put on the moon or anything like this in the recommendations. So I think they're quite measured. What I would find very interesting, actually, going forward perhaps, is if we could have a table from the officers in their report, which actually stated on one side of the page the recommendations which came from scrutiny, then with the comments, and then the proposed recommendations. And actually, there were part of the way through this on page 29 where they've actually listed, tabulated the recommendations. And I welcome this. So please note this. Perhaps we could go one step further and actually have it tabulated, say, recommendation, comment, and recommendation to strategy group, so we can have some transparency for the members so they can see the journey of thinking. That was actually the comment that I wanted to make. I think that we could argue all night about the specific points on there. I think if this were earlier, we would have more energy, but I think if we could at least have that one implemented modification from the officers, that would make these discussions easier later. Because I think ultimately the principle is, as scrutiny, I think we are measured. We do want to see, we don't expect them all to be implemented necessarily, otherwise we don't do anything. But we'd like to see probably more than 50%, at least 50% of them implemented. But I would say, in conclusion, I would be happy to support the 4 recommendations. At least it makes some level of progress. And it has been noted the recommendations in the committee report.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. I look at it on page 4.2, page 29. I think that's a very helpful column there about the recommendations and comments. I think also it helps you on scrutiny improvement. And the work of scrutiny improvement is very much valued. And I think the more members who get involved in that process, the better. I think that would be, because I think the more members get involved have input, and obviously their views are also considered. And it's not considered just 2 or 3 members so often the time.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to raise that. Whilst the two representatives this evening obviously are Labour, and
I've got one about that.
No, I'm not making a political point here. When it comes into that committee room, we discuss it apolitically, and we have a cross level there, and we reach a consensus on the evidence. That is important.
No, and I have full confidence that takes place. And I have to say also some of these recommendations are very good, so I'm not one in principle at all. And I don't want to deter the work of the scrutiny improvements, so I think we want to take on board as much as we can on the recommendations they put forward, because it shows they've given thought to it. It's about improving services, in this case it's about improving access and communication. And therefore, I just think sometimes it's nice to have a strategic view, and sometimes there's some details which do need to be improved, and I think that's very helpful when you come through.
Yes, I think, Chair, I think the big picture is the strategic objective is to improve access, and obviously some of those tactical items, which is well as 9 very simple steps.
Right.
And actually, sometimes, interesting, on some of them, we had this contrast earlier where perhaps there wasn't enough focused detail, and actually we tread a very difficult line, because otherwise these things would never come out of scrutiny.
No,
if we had to keep analysing.
Yeah.
So they come around, there's a level of output which is either tactical or more strategic, but at some point in the line, the dots have to be crossed, etc. by the full.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Councillor Chancellor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Two observations. One is that I'm very keen that we should increase people's understanding of the People's Panel. I used to be a member of the People's Panel, and I went along to a meeting shortly after I'd been elected, and I was told that I shouldn't be there because it's not open to elected members. And the other point I wanted to make is that the recommendation number 4, public participation in elections, could continue to be promoted. I did research something from, I think, the Chief Executive recently, which was trying to start that ball rolling, but I think it was the Council Courier, which is an internal document, and it might be...
Was this the polling station review, Tom?
It was connected with that, and also with the individual registration, which has gone very smoothly here. And there is some work in hand elsewhere to raise people's interest in getting involved in everything. We see recently in the Scottish referendum that when people think it will really make a difference, they take part.
I think that's the point. You're absolutely right, Councillor Chancellor. And that's maybe part of the publicity drive and public participation. When they think they can make a difference, they take part more. Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I've worked on 3 or 4 task panels since I became councillor, and they are never put forward word for word. Sometimes they're condensed down, sometimes they're put through slightly different, some are not put forward. This seems to cover most of it. 1, 2 and 4 are there, and then the third one says that community engagement strategies shall be reviewed, taking into account the ideas in the scrutiny improvement task panel report. It's all there.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Very helpful, Councillor Eden. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, only just going back to consultation. If you look at the consultation that we did, we run with parishes on page number 39, on question number 6.
Yep.
Do you feel your contribution to consultations has an impact on council policy? 78% said no.
What I don't know now, how many people actually answered that?
Yes, we do. It's at the top, 46. 46 parishes responded, 78% said no.
And interesting enough, we did some work with the parishes actually on that particular point.
And not 48 parishes, Chairman, it's 48 responses.
46 responses.
Yeah. Well, it said one which should have been one.
Well, it's not one responsible parish necessarily. I think in fact far unlikely to do that at all.
Chairman, if you look at the bottom one of number 6, it's not quite as vast, but it's a totally different picture.
Yeah. Sorry,
yes,
Councillor.
which is interesting, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Councillor
Yes,
Morgan.
so what does that tell you?
Chair, thank you. I'm
No,
sure
what
you'll be
does it tell
exhausted
you?
tonight at the end of the meeting.
No, I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Chair, I wanted to pick a really semantic point actually from Councillor Evan. The point is, what we deal in when we have an outcome, and I'm very specific about this in my role as the chairman of this committee, that we have, that's why they're worded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and in many cases time bound. But when they come into it, the third point, ideas, we're not talking about ideas. Ideas are very difficult to measure, which is why one of the performance indicators we have is we track them through how many recommendations we make, how many get adopted by strategy, and how many get adopted by forecasting of our key performance indicators. Ideas, we don't know what ideas are being adopted. That's why we like to talk about recommendations. So that's why I need to be quite focused. I'm not interested in ideas, I'm interested in recommendations.
Oh, I said the wrong word.
That's a great point. Well, so you'll come back to the end.
No, it's all right.
What I'm going to say though, Councillor Morgan, also might be helpful, when you have these questions, which are fine, you know, you have the question which Wendy referred to about having an impact on council policy. What's also helpful sometimes is to understand why they're saying something. So if you have a response that's yes or no, that's fine. But then if it's one day you think, well, why is that? Then you haven't got the evidence to say why they think that necessarily. Unless you've got evidence elsewhere, which I'm not seeing.
Well, what we do is that there should be a logical flow in our document as you work through the scope, the methodology to the conclusions, and the recommendation should be easily drawn from the conclusions. That's what I was saying, actually going back, if you look at that was the point on page 30 of the report from the officers. Actually, it's quite interesting. On second examination, we made 9 recommendations, but the table only 13. So, but what I'm looking, actually, by retrospect, what I'm also looking for is when we have 9 recommendations, they're clearly listed, the comments are clear, then actually, as a strategy group, we can clearly say that makes perfect sense at a single view why they've actually gone from that recommendation to that comment, and then they've actually conclude these recommendations. It's all about transparency in the line of sight, I think, is important.
I think you're absolutely right, Councillor.
Just a point of clarity, if I may, Chairman. It's true that Tasmania produced 9 recommendations, but the SNI committee resolved 8, and it's those 8 that are in that table.
The work in the parishes and towns is underway. We are doing some work in parishes and towns about communication. One of the things I find is, and I think Steve's found this himself in shared planning roles, but sometimes the public don't understand, so therefore they need to be informed. And I think that's the point about consultation, where you inform people, and sometimes their perception isn't necessarily the reality of what's taking place. And when you spread it to them, they don't understand. That's not to say sometimes things can't be improved, because they can always be improved, especially around communication. But there are times I come across where people's perceptions of things aren't necessarily what's really happening. There's reasons why that's going on. And sometimes it's word of mouth goes around, people say one thing, and then, you know, it's not quite right, and therefore, but that's what we can put right by consulting more frequently, maybe consulting, or maybe communicating with them directly. And one of the things about the parish forums, which we have twice a year, and I know that we get very good feedback from the parish council and members who attend those forums, because we actually do learn quite a lot about what's going on in the council. And also we do have email, and I appreciate an email, not everyone reads the emails, but emails is a good form of communicating that to all parishes, if we want to do so. But I think what I'm trying to say tonight, I think, Councillor Morgan, from my perspective as the chair, and maybe from your perspective, there are some things maybe in terms of how we go from your task panels to the report that ends up in the papers here tonight, and that might be involving maybe more discussion of the portfolio holder responsible in terms of and the officer about the final paper. I just think, because I think that's helpful sometimes as a clear understanding when the paper comes forward to this meeting tonight. It's not criticism, it's just saying, because I'm saying there's 3 parties involved here. I'm just trying to improve things maybe for future meetings, that's all.
Chair, thank you. We're taking on board, and actually we're more than happy to talk to, as part of our closing activities in scrutiny stages before we have the recommendations, we can bring in the relevant portfolio and we'll take some action. And you also note that actually that's why we're having increasing the activity of call-ins for portfolio as well, which is why we have Councillor Mills and Warren at the next meeting to discuss.
Who's got next one?
Councillor Hills and Councillor Warren.
Awesome.
Following the Councillor previously, etc.
That's right. Right, Chairman. Councillor Oswald.
You may have discussed this while I was going to other places, but when I look at the questions asked to parish councils, do you feel you've given enough time to contribute to DDC consultations? Well, that would be planning, and they definitely don't consider that.
We excluded planning in
You exclude that. I'm sorry, but I didn't know that. So you excluded Danny, on all those questions.
There was
To the parish.
in the question, the first line said excluding.
I beg your pardon, because there is a big perception, which we're trying
to address.
We're trying to address that.
We do actually try and respond to these concerns. So is it Councillor Paul then?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, some of this is, unfortunately, you can lead a horse to water and all the rest of it. Especially when it comes to some of the parishes. You know, I'm sticking my neck into a noose by saying that, but for instance, occurred which the Chief Exec was aware of regarding matters in Daventry town. A simple email to an officer today resulted in an email going out to all the parishes, to the chair of the parishes and to the clerk. So there is an involvement with the parishes. What the chair and what the clerk does with those emails is their own business. Promotion and participation in elections in a new campaign. I think we've done very, very well with elections. I know there's been a poor turnout in some, but we are participating, and the Electoral Commission give us some quite rousing ticks when it comes to the organisation, etc. on that issue. Thank you, Chair.
I think all members of the room have a duty also to assist that process. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to observe in the course of the debate, several people have used the whole leading a horse to water idea, and we've talked about planning and the Scottish referendum as two examples of where people have got involved because there are issues that matter to them. But the other thing that happens is opportunities are created for them to make their views known. So there was a referendum, they get their 3 minutes of planning. And I think all I'm trying to say, and where my frustration boils down, is we have this, it seems to me that there's a general attitude that we wait for people to come to us, and I feel we should be going out to them. And you can't, it's a kind of paternalistic kind of approach that I think is a little bit outdated in many local authorities. And I feel we're often talking that we're at the vanguard of things and we're front runners, and I'm disappointed really that we're not sort of taking a few extra steps to try things a bit different, rather than saying we're going to improve what we're doing already. I think there were some really interesting ideas that we found in the course of the consultation that informed the task panel report, and I think that's my frustration. It's sort of a cultural difference, I think, that rather than waiting for people to come to you and tell them what they think, and if they don't come saying well they don't care, it just seems to be a very outdated and unhelpful and probably inefficient approach to how we represent people.
I think it's interesting actually. I mean, I know you're a fairly new member, Councillor Campbell, but I mean, I think over time you see what I've learnt over time about the public's interaction with councillors. When it matters to them, they do interact. And it's normally around planning. It can be other things actually. I mean, Maureen always went to the outdoor forum. I can remember the interactions we had in the outdoor forum. I remember the town council at its inception, there's also the interaction there. So when people think there's an important reason for actually getting engaged, they do get engaged. I think also going out to try to get engaged doesn't necessarily work. I'm sure we all go canvassing around election time. You might ask people what are your issues, and then you go canvassing. I think all of us get intelligence about our own areas and even wider than our own areas, and that's quite useful in terms of understanding what's going on right and what's not going right. So I think there's a lot that goes on which actually is informal, where we get a lot of feedback. I get a lot of feedback as leader. I'm sure you all do as members about all sorts of things, and that's helpful because obviously you do pick up a lot. So I'm with you, Abigail, in terms of getting more public involved in consultations, responding more. But I also believe you can't make them do it. If they don't want to do it, they won't. If they think there's an important reason for doing it, so maybe like the Scottish referendum is obviously very important to the people of Scotland, then they actually participate and participate in big numbers. Councillor Paul.
We have within the council a CRM system, relational database, and the results of that are fed into the system. Perhaps the officer, Maria Taylor, could expand on that slightly, the information that comes in through the CRM system.
No?
What you want to give you some more information about the sort of information
what I'm saying is that we've said that if people want to get involved, they will get involved, and that's used the old enterprise. When enterprise were first taken on board, the call centre actually spiked and then went down. So you are gaining lots of information by people phoning the call centre and entering it onto the CRM lagging system.
Yeah, we've got all of that intelligence from the day the CRM system was set up. By topic, by person, by address, by type of query, by how quickly it was resolved. We've got a lot of intelligence.
That's very helpful, John. Thank you.
So that's a rolling intelligence.
Thanks for highlighting that information there, yes. Councillor Gilbert, sorry.
Just a couple of points, and I realise it's getting late. I welcome the fact that the Chair of Scrutiny and portfolio holders does a suggestion they get a look at the process, because if I was on a task panel, I'd feel a little bit demotivated after all the work that's been done from what I've seen this evening. The other thing is, I know we're concentrating on these two questions, 6 and 7, on consultation, but we must remember consultation is about often a person's perception and not always fact. I'm not saying that it's not worth doing consultation, but this is where I think that third word, marketing, is part of what we've spoken about as a council in several meetings, that, you know, when a decision's made, it's marketing that message back out there so that the residents understand and we sell that they have been involved. And the classic bit is, you know, Scotland Boat, where in the end they went all out on a marketing strategy to get out there and get the residents the message out to them so they understood.
Thank you, Councillor B.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the fact is, people do not know what local councils do. They don't know the difference between a town council, a district council, and a county council. And I think strategy groups seem to think that it was important that we try and get out there and explain it to people. People should be involved. They should know what's going on. I mean, they're not even very involved in national politics and don't understand that very well on the whole. Lacking in education, but that's going down to school level. But it is important in this country that people do understand. They should participate. They should know what's going on, and they should be interested enough to know how their money is spent. I think, you know, it's beholden on us to try and go out and help them to understand.
Thanks, Councillor. 3 minutes to go. We've got 3 hours coming up. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, 25 years ago, Chairman, the housing department in those days in this council was trying to get information from tenants to make life was here to make a better life for our tenants. So we sent them out questionnaires. Nobody answered. So we had to give a prize. We gave a television away.
More spontaneous.
No, it wasn't one of mine. They gave a television away to the person, you know, the lucky drawer at the end. That was the way you had to get people interested. These were tenants that were going to get benefits to their houses.
Okay, that's marketing, Joe says. Right, any more tenants you've got available? Sorry, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping that, Chair, I meant a concluding remark. If you come back to
Councillor Randall, I don't want to speak to I haven't got, no, you've got 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Councillor Randall.
Very simple.
I'll only take 1 minute.
In the interest of progress, I was going to suggest that we...
Sorry, Councillor Charter.
I was going to suggest, Chairman, that we take on board the comment earlier that we should substitute for the word ideas in recommendation 3 the word recommendation, because it doesn't actually say that we're going to do what they do, but it does say that we should consider, take into account their recommendations.
Recommendations, good word.
And then we should decide. Because
that's a fair point.
Thank you, because this is the point. I say to you, it's all about traceability.
It is, yeah.
Tell me in 6 months' time how many ideas have been adopted, and work backwards, and tell me if you can spot them. That's why I said ideas.
Okay, ideas. Right, Councillor Randall.
Oh yeah, I was only going to say one. I'm going on a survey. I've done a survey last year at doctor's surgery at the flu clinic. And it was the fact that we were saying, would you complete the survey? And we got 700 responses. Now, if we just left it online, would have got about less than 100, I would have thought.
Well,
It's just that going out engaging, that's when you get more response talking about things.
well, on Dr. Survey, when we did the Guildford survey years ago, we had tremendous response because it was about a brand new survey going into Guildford and where it's going to be situated. Because people actually related to the village. They said, well, we want it either there or there. And that's why people engage when they realise it's going to impact on their lives. They engage more.
And that's why some of these councils actually go out to shopping centres. They go out with a consultation to engage, that they can pick, residents can actually ask about it rather than just reading it and not really understanding the consultation. So.
Last 5 words, Colin.
I think we should change the words marketing strategies because we don't have any to market. I think we should change that for information strategy to get the information out there in the best way possible.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Thanks for that. That's 20 words, Colin. I've just been like 20 words. You want to say something? Sorry. That's okay. Colin, last word.
Chair, thank you. I wanted to respond to the point earlier about us being the task panels being demoted. They certainly won't be. We thrive on the debate.
Yeah.
We'll be more focused. We're not naive about the terrain, and actually we'll keep coming back and we'll be being specific, and we'll want them traced through. That's the whole point, and that's our role in the council to be the challenges in that.
Can I say well done to you and your team? Well done to you. You've seen how much debate has been provided in your 2 reports, so all from the Scrutiny Improvement panel, so well done to everyone on Scrutiny Improvement, and hopefully more will engage in that process. And this is the welcome. Thank you, Mr. Dean. Well, 3 hours is up. That concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
We agreed the recommendations.
We agreed the recommendations, all 4. Is that agreed?
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
Well done. Okay, well done. Have a safe journey home. Thanks a lot.